Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our wrestling podcast. So without further ado, the following contest is scheduled for one fall, and today's topic, the WWF legacy of the Macho Man Randy Savage.
Welcome to the O.W.P. This is our wrestling podcast. This is Dave along with Jess.
Hi.
And Cuz.
Yeah.
Bringing you our perspective on the world of professional wrestling. No inside sources, no ties to the industry, just stories from the diehards, sharing opinions with you. And now on to our topic today, the legacy of the Macho Man WWF style. Guys, this is going to be fun. I'm really excited to finally touch on the Macho Man. If you can just tell by fans even today, still wearing Macho Man shirts, even though you can't get them always on WWE, even though now you can. I actually just picked one up for my tickets to SmackDown on Tuesday this week. Kind of excited to see that in Ontario. Got my Macho Man shirt. Not as good as some of the other ones you've seen out there, but you can tell that Macho Man, even years after he's passed, he is still resonating with diehard wrestling fans today. Jess, tell us about what you think, in summation of the Macho Man before we get started. And we'll go to Cuz also.
I mean, we could easily do like a 3-hour show like on Macho Man and what he's done and everything. So I'm glad we're talking about him. Don't worry, everybody out there. We're not going to do a 3-hour show. Maybe one day. But no, of course, like this is just going to be good stuff. And he's a legend. And what do you say? And I mean, he's a huge part of our childhood anyway. Like, so it's easy for us to talk about. And for people that kind of just started watching wrestling like during the Attitude Era or a little bit after, I forget how long it was since Macho was relevant. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, really, WCW 99 was really like the last time that he was really relevant. I mean, I know he came back for a brief second, blink in TNA, and if you blinked, you missed him and all that. But after that, he was done. I mean, he didn't go back to WWE for a nostalgia tour or anything like that. And like it's been a long time since 1999. It's 20 fucking years, right?
Yeah.
Jesus. Like that's crazy to me. And I don't remember off the top of my head. I know you're going to cover it in your notes about what year he actually passed away. But even then, from the time he passed away, it's been a long time. And I'm glad to talk about this. So if people that have just heard about him or just seen some of his stuff on the network, maybe we can kind of fill in the blanks for you, because we're going to talk about, famous storylines he was involved in and stuff like that. So maybe we can help teach people about him, because he definitely his story deserves to be told over and over again.
Yeah, he passed a little over 8 years ago, just to give you some perspective on that.
God, 8 years.
Yeah. It's been still sad to think about it. Cuz, what do you got on the Macho Man? Cream of the crop.
Freak out. Well, just like the Ultimate Warrior, like I said, and Hogan, the same guy,
He's not just like the Ultimate Warrior.
No, but you know what I mean. Those were the three guys that got me into wrestling, and I remember, just as much as the Warrior, I remember all the Macho Man promos, of course, the colors of his outfits. That as a kid, I'm like, ooh, colors. But yeah, man, one of my favorites, my favorite promo, my favorite, favorite on the mic, probably next to Stone Cold Steve Austin. And it's gonna be a good episode.
I think there's several Macho Man promos that are cut that you could sit new wrestlers down and say, this is how you do it.
Yes.
It's quite impressive. He gets the word across, he gets the plug, whatever he's
energy,
plugging, gets that across.
The intensity.
He puts his face over if he's the heel, because he puts it over in a shitty way. He knows how to do it. He knows what he's doing, or he knew what he was doing. And then let's not even get started with the ring technician work shit that it's pretty much unmatched when you put all that package together, with maybe a few guys that can get close to that overall package of mic work, ring work,
facial expressions, man.
Hey,
in the ring,
he lived Macho Man.
It's fucking great.
some people turn it on, turn it off, right? Kurt Angle, the wrestler, is not Kurt Angle, the person. We're okay with that, but Macho lived it. Macho really was the closest thing that.
And sometimes it caused incidents backstage because of it.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right.
Little predicaments are rather much not being.
Little heat backstage isn't such a big deal. Let's just jump right into
you make
it.
a name.
So, Randall Mario Poffo, that's his name, ladies and gentlemen. I know that sounds even crazier than the Macho Man, but that's his real name. Was born in November 15th, 1952. The wrestler, the actor, the color commentator, was billed at 6'2", 237 pounds when he was heavily into the business. He was trained by his father, Angelo Poffo, along with his brother, Lanny Poffo, better known as who?
The Genius?
The Genius.
Macho Man.
the Genius,
Macho
right?
Man got me in.
And he, Angelo, his dad, was also a famous wrestler himself in the 50s and 60s. So it almost seemed destined that his sons would follow in his footsteps, but it wasn't right away for Randall, or Randy as we would call him, or even the Macho Man, right? Randy was a pretty good baseball player out of high school, played catcher. In fact, he was so good, he was drafted by the St. Louis Cardinals right out of high school. He played on the minor league teams at 18 years of age. And this is where you kind of start to hear some cool stories about the athletic ability of what we know as the Macho Man later on. He used to use a sledgehammer on a tire that would be swinging from like a tree, and swing with the sledgehammer to perfect his swing and get his wrist control a little faster, for those high speed pitches. Not that Macho was the greatest hitter in the world. I know we kind of make fun of that because you're going to hear his average in a second, and it's like, no wonder he quit. But there was other people later on that saw that technique, and hitting coaches in the pros today use that same technique to get people's wrist speed a little bit faster to get through to make contact. Pretty cool, right? Another cool story about that is that he actually hurt his right shoulder, which forced him to learn how to throw left-handed. And as gifted as Randy was, like I said, it wasn't good enough for the majors. Played in 4 minor league seasons, 254 average, 16 home runs, and 66 RBIs. Not very good.
No, pretty poor.
Pretty poor. But you know what? I'm so glad it was
I don't
poor.
know if that hitting technique worked.
I know, right?
It's funny that they took that off someone who couldn't hit.
That hitting technique worked right there.
Yeah, apparently.
Maybe it was a shoulder injury.
There you go. That hitting technique.
So,
But I'm glad it didn't work out.
I was going to say, I'm so glad it didn't work out, because the things that we got to see with Macho Man is quite impressive. And in a lot of ways shaped the wrestling world for the rock and wrestling era, I think, too. So starts that wrestling career in 1973. He starts as the Spider. Not too many people know about that, but he later changed it to Randy Savage in Georgia Championship Wrestling at the suggestion of the Booker. Does anybody know who the Booker was?
No.
I'll give you a hint.
I'm the Shockmaster.
Shockmaster.
It's
Scorpion.
Wait, Tugboat was
no.
Tugboat was the Booker?
I know, right?
Oh, Fred Ottman.
Ole
Oh,
Anderson.
no.
My name's Ole.
Mr. Ole Anderson, voice of Black Scorpion and Shockmaster.
Sting.
In our archive shows of overhyped and failed gimmicks, which is what you guys are talking about. So check those out when you get a chance.
Does anyone catch him laughing, though, before he starts the actual voiceover for Shockmaster?
No, I
You hear him
don't.
go,
Sting.
I'm glad, I
sorry,
know.
not Sting,
When Ottman fell over.
you hear him like laughing
Yeah, I think right at the beginning
into
you
the
hear
mic.
it.
You
Yeah.
hear him fucking chuckle.
So even
It's
Ole's
fucking
laughing
great.
on live
Yeah, you
TV.
hear-
Oh, god damn it!
So you want
I'm glad he could laugh at a time like that.
So
Good
great.
for Ole.
Like companies sinking faster than the Titanic, and he's
Every
like,
time I hear that clip, I
We're already-
die when I hear that.
So
Oh my
I
God.
swear, every time I mention Ole Anderson, we get so far, of course, on this show. I guess it's just a requirement.
Oh, man.
but I can't do like an impression of him because, like, I mean, Cuz does one of him being the Shockmaster,
Yeah,
or
that's the only
Black
important one.
Scorpion. But like Ole, like, there's no like Dusty. I just make him Booker, even when I know he wasn't even with the company.
Yeah.
He was Booker. So,
Just drink this.
but yeah, Ole Anderson's just like boring. So like that's why. But he was the Booker for a lot of that stuff in WCW.
Mhm. So
Again, like this
Yeah.
shit Booker, and then but he spots Macho Man out. That's
Yeah.
good on him.
yeah,
He's the greatest
and
promo of
yeah,
all
he
time.
actually told him you should change your name to Randy Savage. So that was kind of a, I guess that went over pretty well, right? And then also Randy's mom looked into, of all things, a Reader's Digest article and said Macho Man. This is according to what the research I did.
You
It's
changed
gonna
the
be
name
like
to
the-
Macho Man.
Is going to be the
What was
next
your
big
second
name.
guess? It's this thing called the Black Scorpion I'm working on. I may not release that for a few years from now.
You gotta talk
Exactly.
No, I'll take Macho Man, I think.
Yeah.
So basically, Randy worked all over the territory till his father pulled him and his brother Lanny due to what he called a lack of push and he started his own federation called ICW. But that had disbanded pretty quickly.
Who,
And
the dad?
Yeah, their dad. It was really, really fast. Like less.
He was mad because they weren't pushed, or him?
He was his sons were not pushed, so he pulled them. According to
I'm
according to
taking
the
them out of here.
archives that I
That's like a typical. It's so funny. This is totally like minor league, like
Yeah.
baseball and football. Not even minor league, like Pop
yeah,
Warner and
school
all
or
that.
something.
Yeah,
My kids
Well,
are
the parents
better
like,
than
we're
They're
you.
not
changing-
passing your class. We're
my
taking them
kids.
out of here.
Yeah, my kids aren't starting. We're
We're
going to a
a
different
private
school.
school.
Yeah. Well, with one of them, I would have to say that Angelo Papa was absolutely right that he should have been pushed more. But
school.
yeah.
Growing a beard.
God damn it. So
When you look at his baseball pictures and he has no
Yeah.
facial hair, I'm so glad he grew a beard.
yeah. It was so
That
needed,
is
bro.
not
Yeah.
Macho Man without
Yeah.
a beard. He has like a big mouth like Mick Jagger.
Yeah. So someone needs to tell Cuz the same thing.
Yeah, I'm going back door. Yeah,
Cuz shaved his
Yeah,
beard.
'cause
Nobody
had to.
saw before he had
No,
this,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
he had this luscious beard.
His wife
Fucking
almost left him because
locks.
she didn't recognize him.
Goldilocks.
That's
or
what
my
she told me.
My luscious locks.
He really lost his keys in the beard and he had to shave it off to find him.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he had a bird's nest in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was a
Peter
bet.
Griffin.
I lost a bet.
Lost a bet.
No.
So ICW was disbanded very quickly. The Poffo brothers joined their competition, CWA, with Mr. Jerry Lawler and the Rock and Roll Express, just to name a few large names from that talent pool. He feuded with both of them, having both face and heel runs there. Eventually,
It's
losing.
kind of like now.
Yeah.
Like they just make up their own shit. Like, "Oh, I'm not going here. Let's go make the CZP. Like, okay,
Yeah.
let's go. And then they go and do it. And they're like, well, that fucking doesn't work. Let's go over to J97. They're like, let's
Yeah.
go. Like, it's weird. Like
It-
nowadays, it's kind of like that too. It's like, oh, AEW, here comes AEW. Oh, here we go.
I was gonna make that- I was
PCW.
gonna make
Global
that-
Force Wrestling. Well,
I was gonna
Yeah,
make that
global-
quick comment too. Like, just don't be surprised if AEW fails, guys. I know they're doing something great. I know they sold out in 15 minutes again.
No, I don't think it's going to fail.
I hope not. I mean, I hope it doesn't. It just, you never know with these things. You never know what the money's going to push, if they're going to continue.
No,
to
I
back
think
it.
this guy, the millionaire, is like pretty solid.
He's
behind
pretty,
him.
and he's pretty.
But they're doing
passionate.
stuff conservatively too. They're only doing 4 pay-per-views a year. They're
yeah,
Smart.
they keep it like
yeah.
that.
They're not going head to head.
Their
with the
TV show is
machine.
going to be probably 2 hours. I'm assuming. I haven't read any press release on it.
and
but
they're
it's
going to
gonna
be
have
on
be
different
2
days.
hours.
Aren't they going to be on
has
Thursdays
to
or
be.
something?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, and the house. I don't think they're doing any house shows at first, or if it is, it's very minimal.
Goddamn, we're so off course. Okay, so in NCWA, finally, Macho Man is losing to Lawler in a loser leaves town match on June 7th, 1985. Why is that?
Because you weren't anyone, goddammit, if you didn't lose to Jerry Lawler.
In a loser
Everyone
team-
fucking like
Every-
on their Hall of Fame speech. It's like, and then I went down to Memphis and good old Jerry, and everybody cheers. And I'm like, yep, it was down there. It's like, yeah, he fucking beat everybody.
yeah, he's like a
I'll
38 time
drive
champion
him.
down there.
It's just what you do. You
Yeah,
go
that's
through
it.
their emotion. You lose at the king.
But in this case, you're losing to the king
some
because,
green-
quite frankly,
greener
you're on
pastures.
to greener pastures. You're on to bigger and better things. This starts the WWF run from 85 to 94.
wait, I thought we were going to do this whole episode on the CJW run.
No,
Oh,
we'd be done already.
I think you're missing the boat, Dave. But go
yeah,
on
Yeah,
with this WWF shit.
let's talk about Houston wrestling.
This fucking low class promotion.
Why don't we talk about Houston wrestling? Because nobody gives a fuck. That's why.
Yeah,
It's like that's the reason. Okay.
like any of those podcasts were like, next week we're doing a special. We're going to do Windy City Wrestling. I'm like, nah, I won't be tuning in that week. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of significance there, and that's all good and all, but come on.
Well, it's the same
A
thing
lot of
when
good classics.
when one of our favorite podcasts says, "Oh, we're doing a show on JBL." Well, fuck you.
Yeah,
'Cause I'm-
don't care.
I'm not
You're
listening.
running out of shit to talk about.
That's
apparently.
what it comes down to. Yep. Not listening to that bullshit. So hopefully more people will listen to us and talk about the oldies but goodies. Anyway, Macho Man was labeled as the greatest free agent in wrestling, where several managers attempted to represent him and he declined them all to pick the one and only pop quiz.
Doctor of Style Slick. Go on.
Yeah, that is
Go on.
not.
Okay.
Yeah, this is where we finally start to see the real life girlfriend and wife
Well,
eventually.
let's agree to disagree on that one. Go on.
Miss Elizabeth.
Oh, okay. I
There
guess.
you go.
That's
Yeah,
right.
That's right. Yeah.
Introducing the managers to his current manager. Oh, God. I don't know what in the world. We're going to have to find out.
Macho
a lot more
gets a
about
push.
Which, I mean, honestly, like from the beginning, this was done correct. They were,
Oh, it's great.
I don't remember what year they got married, but they were absolutely together here at this point in real life, behind the scenes, Macho Man and Elizabeth. I want to say they got married in like 85 or something, but I could be wrong. But it was close to the time where they were definitely together. So it was pretty risky. You know, the old thing in wrestling is like never bring your wife on the road.
Yeah, that's changed.
You know, and like so, but Macho Man brought her, felt that she could add to him. Obviously, didn't really realize what a pit he was bringing her into. You know, it's like wrestling, especially back then. You know, now it's like you know divas on E or Total Divas or whatever. They're all married to each other or whatever. But like
Yeah, they
back here,
they
it was like
understand
yeah,
it.
like
Yeah.
it's you'd never brought your wife around the locker room mainly because it's a bunch of guys, but at the same time they're all cheating on their wives anyway. Back then. And like not all of them, most of them, and like they all do drugs and shit like that. So it was always just like, don't bring your wife with you on the road. But Macho Man like decided to bring her on the road and like make her a part of the show, which is funny because later we'll talk about like his jealousy and stuff. But it's just kind of funny. Like he chose to, I'm going to keep her close to me, and then that way like no one will get her. And it's like it's weird that he even brought her aboard.
I think Macho bucked the system very early, and this is one of those examples of
Yeah,
like you said, don't bring your wife on the road.
don't bring a pretty gal to Vince. He's going to use her.
Yeah, well, that definitely happened for sure, right? So,
Ha,
so
you bitch.
after all that goes down, Macho gets a push right away in early '85, and he starts to feud with Tito Santana, who's our current IC title champion at the time. And you know, we're going to talk about him soon in our history of the IC title episode. We're putting that together. We're excited to bring that to you, so stay tuned. We all feel Tito just missed the crest of that tidal wave that was rock and wrestling. He was so good back in the day. He felt he could have been doing a run with Hogan. He felt he could have been a champion, and it might have been if it happened a few years earlier. It's very possible, but that's just not how the cards worked out for him. They feud all over. Macho winning by countout and not taking the IC title or just losing altogether. Finally, on February 29th of said year, in Boston Garden, a taped episode from the 9th of the same month, Savage gets a heel win against Santana using a foreign object and takes that IC title. So that's a big deal.
Another point in this one is this was the very beginning seeds of Dangerous Danny Davis turning into the heel referee that people would know. And especially in WrestleMania 3, this was the first title. He was just first of all, he's in khaki pants. I have no idea why he was in khaki pants in this match. But I remember two things from Macho beating Santana. The way he did it, Santana goes to lift him for a belly to back suplex over the rope. Macho Man has foreign object in his hand, hits him as he's going over, falls on top of Tito, pins him. Danny Davis kind of gives a fast count. And Danny Davis would just do a little, like he was doing little heel tactics during the match. Like he was kind of not paying attention, letting Savage get away with stuff or whatever. So this was they planted the seeds here of Dangerous Danny Davis going from a referee to a heel wrestler being managed by Jimmy Hart.
We got a new champion. I can't believe it. We got a new Intercontinental champion, Monsoon. He just threw it outside the ring, Jess.
So at that point, we know Macho is off and running. Little known fact at this time that Macho actually beat Hogan in a WWF heavyweight title match.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, I believe it was dark.
Gotta
Obviously,
hate
it was a
Macho
house
Man
show.
now.
So yeah, right away,
And,
it's
and,
weird.
and it was a count out, but
hate
I
me,
think this is a grooming.
Yeah, they
session
put the
here, right?
title on Macho. They obviously had confidence in him. And I've said it a million times in past episodes. When you got a championship, it's like getting a promotion at work. Back then, not now, but back then, you brought more money to the table. Your merchandise was selling better. You're getting over with the crowd. You benefited the territory in some way. So they put a championship on you because, you know, they meant something. It's crazy, I know. But so they put the Intercontinental Champion, which is the second highest title in WWF. And they put it on him. And then also at the same time, rather than let him ride that rocket, which they could have easily done and it would have been just fine, they actually kind of pulled him. They would run like A, B, and C shows. Hogan would kind of headline the A shows. The IC champ would headline the B shows. And the tag champions usually would do the C shows or something like that. Or a hot, you know, mid-card feud would headline the C shows. So they decided to pull Macho up for a little bit in like 86 and kind of put him in there with Hulk and test that dynamic out. You know, it was not champion versus champion as in Savage's title was on the line, but it was Savage challenging for the world title, and the Miss Elizabeth factor was in there, and they kind of were just playing around, and you could tell early on that Vince and Hulk really generally liked Macho Man and Elizabeth and their dynamic in there because it was something really Hulk could sink his teeth into because he was a mega face. He was usually facing these giants like Bundy and One Man Gang and Andre and all these guys. And yeah, he had the feuds with Piper and Orndorff, but Savage was kind of a smaller guy in the sense of, you know, for a human being, he was a big guy, but, you know, for a wrestler, he was not very big. So it was kind of cool to see Hulk in there with that, you know, that chicken shit heel that would just put Elizabeth in front of him and Hulk would come after him and Hulk would be like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, and all that stuff. And they really fine-tuned Macho's character. And Hulk was known for speaking highly of Randy Savage in the back at that time and told Vince, like, A, I want to do Elizabeth. B, Macho Man's got something. And Vince going, ditto,
Brother.
on pretty much everything you said. I already did her.
Yeah, you got me. Hold on.
Gonna get my sloppy seconds, Terry. Let's go do some fucking coke. Let's go. Like, and that's how that was the behind the scenes meeting between Vince and Hulk.
You totally got me choking on myself on that, bro.
Eh?
That was bad. Brother, I can't believe you just said that. Brother, first
That's
of all.
the truth. It's the way Hogan and Terry talk to each other, or Vince and Terry. I don't even know what they
I bet Hogan and Terry. I bet Hogan and Terry
does
talk
talk
to each
to
other.
him.
Yeah, he probably does.
Reality.
He's like, listen, brother,
You're the best in the world.
Terry's
You're the best, right, brother? Oh,
Terry's
totally,
like, yeah,
brother.
Hulk, I'll
Yeah,
get
you are,
your
brother.
autograph later.
Your hair's not that bad, brother. I know. I was trying to tell Vince
I'm
that the
not
other day,
bald,
brother.
I don't need to wear a bandana, brother.
Yeah,
But you are keeping the bandana in your back pocket in case, right, brother? Oh, of course, brother. Of course, brother. Brother. Hey, Vince.
bro.
Come on in, brother.
All right.
Brother. Bro.
Oh shit, it's coming off. All right. So
Hogan's taking over.
yeah, Hogan's taking over the podcast now. So Savage at that
Shit,
point.
Randy's coming in. Elizabeth, get your underwear.
Oh,
Come on,
I'm
brother.
sorry. That's what I was going to say. You led me back to the right track. You were talking
I'm a
about
terrible
Elizabeth.
person. They're both dead. Rest in peace.
Nah, it's all
I'm
good.
so sorry.
You know,
it
we-
never
we-
happened.
we
It
love
didn't
him.
happen that
We
way.
love him.
It happened
But
later, I'm sure, but not.
I think the reason you're talking about why Hogan and Vince were
That's what you think, brother.
they were sold on Macho Man, where and Elizabeth was that dynamic. Elizabeth brought something special, even when Macho was a heel. When putting her in front of her, like Elizabeth was getting true,
but
cheers.
the difference
super
here
dynamic.
was that, like there. First of all, she never even acted like a heel because I don't think she was capable of it, really.
It's not in her.
Like
bro.
she was super beautiful and she didn't say anything, which was even better. So
she was like a deer.
you had
bro.
this asshole on the other side going, bibbidi bee, yeah, whoa, yeah, what'd you say? Don't talk to her. And he was doing all that great stuff with her and like would grab her by the chin and lead her over to the other side of the ring when she got too close to his opponent and all that stuff, like in a bad way, like, or, if like the ref touched her too long, like he would go over and like scold the ref and he did awesome things. So you got like this kind of maybe abusive boyfriend vibe
Could
from
be a
him.
little
And,
real here.
but she's so delicate. And so the fans would just be like, you don't touch her, you son of a bitch. Like whenever they would come out, like they would announce, them coming down the aisle led by Miss Elizabeth. And you would hear the pop from the crowd. And, from Sarasota, Florida, weighing 242 pounds, Macho Man. And then you hear boo, like real loud. And like, it was just working. And it wasn't boo as in like, Sable and Mark Marrow, where people were just like, boring Mark Marrow. Yeah, Sable. Like it was like, yay, Elizabeth, and boo, Macho Man. You better not be fucking like abusing her, you son of a bitch. Like,
Yeah.
and that's the emotion you want
the
from the crowd.
true heel heat, not cheap heat. The true.
Yeah,
heel
and he
heat
would
that
just do
he was
great
getting.
things like, on the outside, like he would walk over or he would get thrown outside the ring. His opponent would come after him and he would pull Elizabeth in front of him. And then like, it was awesome. And then he would kind of pull Elizabeth out of the way and cheap shot them. And then people would be like, you asshole. Like, and it was just it was classic heel tactics. But like what worked with Elizabeth more than anything was she wasn't a big personality. She was, but she wasn't. She was so quiet. She ended up being like this massive entity in the corner and this big, you would feel her presence, but like she never spoke that much. Like they would always do cool things in interviews. Gene would always flirt with her, Mean Gene, on purpose. And then like he would ask her questions. So Elizabeth, what do you think? And then like she would just like she would barely get that out. He'd be like, "Whoa, Gene, what are you doing talking to her?" Like, and it was just a great like thing. She
So
would never
good.
actually say anything. She would almost like say it, and then like Macho Man would step in and cut it off.
Yeah.
Like, and it was just great stuff. Just honestly, like really good stuff. I know they script a lot of stuff now, but step one is to just figure out what your character is, right? You can't fight with the writers nowadays, and I'll actually defend the writers.
Are you sure about that?
You can't fight with them if you don't really know what voice. I hate the script. Okay, but I mean, what's your character?
What are you bringing?
Yeah, what voice did you like? How is this not you? In other words, so and I don't know, and maybe I'm totally wrong, and maybe people like Ambrose and Punk are right, and like it doesn't matter what you say what we say, and but. I think Dean Ambrose, for example, did know his character very well, and he hated
did.
the script. But I mean, like, that's my advice. If you watch the Macho Man, like, he was very like he believed everything, and maybe he was like that in real life. But and I think he was to a certain extent. But he believed in himself. But he was just that character. like just a cup of coffee, and like all that stuff that he did like was just really subtle and like genius, and like and he did like the like he had the tweaks and the twitches, and like he would shake his hand. I don't know, I know you can't see it, but like he would shake his hand and everything like in the ring. And, he did weird stuff like that.
90,000+ people watching right there, and this is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat's cup of coffee in the big time. Yeah, cup of coffee in the big time, because you'll never get closer than now. I am the Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion, and I will remain the Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion. And George the Animal Steel.
So yeah, that was the genius dynamic between them, and I mean, it was I can say it simply, and I urge wrestlers now, because apparently I listen to the show for career advice, but yeah, if you don't like shit on scripts until you know your voice. If you know your voice, then you have if you're into your character and you're doing everything. Macho was into his character. He knew what he wanted. He knew how in his mind he was going to use Elizabeth. He knew like how he wanted to come across in interviews. He knew he wanted to be quirky and awkward and like and like just kind of that's all.
Could you imagine anybody telling Macho to change that at that time?
No, I mean it just worked perfect. And
he would have told him
his robes and like the way he just his generic trunks with the 3 stars across the front. Like just everything was him. Like, and he would wear like light pink, and then he would change it, and he just had a different like step about him. Like most wrestlers wore the same gear over and over again. He wore different color trunks all the time, and would change his boots and like all that stuff. And just he was like a girl, and I don't mean that to be rude, but like they would always change and stuff. Macho was totally like that.
Well, he would really
when a girl would go and if she's in a TV show or like a telethon or whatever, she'd come back in a different dress every segment, or hosting an award show or whatever.
He knew that was important.
Yeah, Macho would come out in an interview, he'd be in one robe, and then out in the ring he'd be in a different robe, and like maybe because it was pre-taped, but I mean it was done on purpose. Like he just really liked doing it. He was very flamboyant.
He had a cycle with all that stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Often imitated, never duplicated. This Macho Man.
And again, I'm not a fan of today's wrestling creative, but he was put in there with George Steele. Now, I don't
That's
have
what
a
we're
problem
getting to
with
next,
George.
by the way.
I don't have the problem with George Steele, the guy. George Steele was actually a teacher in real life, and so he
really smart guy.
And when he was in the prime of his wrestling career, George Animal Steele was a heel, and he was a pretty brutal heel. He was pretty mean. But when Vince got a hold of him, it was like, you got to be this kid guy, and you're gonna tear the turnbuckles off, and we're gonna make dolls. You're gonna have the doll Mine or whatever, that little doll that he had was called Mine, and all that stuff. So he got it. He was like a slow adult, basically, is what they kind of painted George Animal Steele to be.
Exactly.
He was the original Eugene. And so he fell in love with Elizabeth. So you could easily, if you're Macho Man behind the scenes, being fuck, like God, like I'm the Intercontinental Champion. You're putting me in with this shit, like this, like I gotta fight like a Mongoloid, basically. Like, what are you? But he did it. I mean, and they ended up facing each other at WrestleMania 2. Macho beat him. And defended his Intercontinental Championship, and like he made the most out of it. But Elizabeth saved that. I think Savage would have went nuts if it was just him and George by himself. But because they could put Elizabeth in there, and George is infatuated with her, and he's like a slow adult, and he knew, like they always say, like slow adults, like they kind of see through people. They know, like like when a bad person comes in the room, they're like, I'm scared of that person. Like it was that George saw Elizabeth, and he knew she was beautiful inside and out, and he wanted to save her from the Macho Man. That was kind of like the implied.
Once again, it's one of those stories. It's a story. It's a
and they did
story.
so smart, because Vince knew. I think Vince knew early on. He had to have known, like, he's going to be a face sooner or later. There's so many things I could do here. So they made sure that the Macho Man character didn't completely go, Darth Vader on everybody. Like he didn't completely go to the dark side. He was a heel, and he knew he was a heel and all that stuff, but there was like redeemable qualities about him. So it's like, George wanted to save him, but Macho never totally did something to make Elizabeth leave him. She always stayed with him. And it was like, kind of like, like an abusive girl stays with an abusive guy, but you wanted to see strong qualities about Macho Man, that maybe there's something salvageable about this guy.
Yeah. And obviously he defended that title against George a couple of times and successful. Then we go on to wrestle Ricky the Dragon Steamboat at WrestleMania 3. There's a lot of things heading up to this. I'm not going to skip it. This match is going to get us a lot of love in future episodes. It's totally inevitable. It's one of the greatest matches ever at a WrestleMania. We'll give it the love it deserves now. Jess, can you discuss the backstory and the ridiculous steal of the show at WrestleMania 3 as we get into it? It's phenomenal.
These two, I mean, Vince knew he was going to put them together. Macho Man had already been champion for over a year at this point. And I think was really close to breaking the record of the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion. I'm not sure the logistics. I know we're going to get more into that on the IC episode. So he was champion for a while, Macho Man, and going into this feud. And Steamboat was this handsome, young, good-looking guy, tan, amazing in the ring. He'd been in the NWA before that, was NWA US champion, feuded with Flair of all people over the US title for a while. And so Steamboat was known in the wrestling community. And when he went to WWF, of course, he was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and Vince made him a little bit more ninja-like and, all that kind of But Steamboat was able to wrestle well. He's so talented in the ring. So putting these two together, of course, you could look back on it now and be like, well, duh. But I mean, back then, it's just, sometimes people are oil and water. Yeah. So Vince put him in a program. The start of the program was basically like Steamboat was going to challenge. So they had a match on one of their syndicated shows. I don't remember if it was Superstars or Wrestling Challenge, and they were wrestling each other. And then Macho just decided, I'm going to take this fucker out, and drapes his throat across the guardrail on the outside of the ring and drops a double axe handle from the top rope onto the outside, crushing his larynx. And then he rolls him back in the ring and grabs the ring bell. For those people who don't know what the ring bell is, it's just a square piece of plywood with an actual bell, ding ding, like put on top of it. So he grabbed that and he jumped off. He put Steamboat in the middle of the ring, jumped off the top rope and rammed that in his throat as well. And this finished Steamboat off and took him off TV for a while and crushed Steamboat's larynx. And Steamboat, they had these silly vignettes. They're so silly, of Steamboat learning how to talk again, putting his hands on his throat, going, like it's ridiculous.
My entire wrestling career, I just do not believe it. Ricky Steamboat absolutely could not breathe. The Maddox behind this door here now. They actually had to put a hole in it, put some kind of a tube for him to breathe.
The confusing and controversial match between Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage. A very serious injury to the larynx was suffered by Ricky the Dragon Steamboat during the course of that match.
Oh, yeah, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, your future seems bleak. Oh, yeah, it does.
Increase the strength of your vocal cords. I'd like you to say this vowel after me. E.
Hey.
Okay, now, you're trying, but I want it to be more crisp. E.
Hey. 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 Hey.
So that was ridiculous, but at the same time, hey, look, it's wrestling, it's a soap opera, right? But the physical action in the ring more than made up for it. So when they finally met at WrestleMania 3, Savage gets a lot of shit for this, but he invited Steamboat over to his home, and they went over this match literally beat by beat. Macho Man drew it out. Steamboat, of course, contributed, but Steamboat was more of like I call it in the ring. You hear Flair say that all the time. We should just call it in the ring. And that's one style and one way of doing things. But Macho Man knew, and I really believe this, I have nothing to base this on other than just watching this unfold, that he was a perfectionist. But on top of that, Macho knew, like, this is my chance. Like, I'm going to be in front of 93,000 people defending the second biggest title in the company. And I'm going to lose it, but this is what you do when you lose. You put the other guy over really well. So we're going to draw this match out, and we're going to steal the show, and we're going to do this and do that. And they put all this innovative stuff in there. I mean, like, Japanese wrestling had been doing this a while, the close counts, like the rapid 2 counts and stuff, but no one in America had seen anything in the United States, had seen anything like that in American wrestling. And these guys had, I don't even know, I'm sure Dave has it in his notes, how many 2 counts, close 2 counts, so many, in the fact that there was a couple cool spots where, I mean, you don't see shows this big. Now WrestleMania is in a dome every year. But like back here, 93,000 people, the sound travels differently in a huge dome like that. There was a couple cool spots where they would go, and it was clearly a 2 count that we could see, but the sound traveled, and the crowd that was far away thought it was 3, and then they erupted on a couple of chances like the match was over. And it's crazy. And you even hear Gorilla Monsoon and Ventura go, no, there was no 3 count there. Like, just, and again, they're treating it like it's a real sport, right? So they're into it as well, and everything just made sense. Go back and watch this match. I guarantee you there's so many people out there that have heard of this match, and if you ask them, have you watched this match? Oh, of course, but they really haven't. Go back and watch it. Just tell whoever's fucking with you in your life, just leave me alone for fucking like 20 minutes and shut your door and lock yourself in your basement or whatever it is that you do, or the bathroom, and turn this match on and watch it from beginning to end. It's really cool. And yeah, all those moves have been done a million times since 1987. But if you really watch it and just get into it and listen to Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse Ventura and just listen to it, it's such a blueprint for how a good match should go, and how announcers should call a match nowadays, and just everything is just so perfect about it. And they stole the show. You know, Hulk and Andre drew the house, but Savage and Steamboat stole the show, and that's legendary at this point. Everybody knows this match, and so many people like Edge and Christian and attribute this match to this is why I got into it. Like I watched this match and we used to reenact it on my living room floor and all that stuff. And like it touched so many people, this match, and because it gave him confidence. Not that obviously Hulk was super over and he was the guy, he was the face, you know, of the company. But at the same time, like it gave hope to people who were like 6 foot, 6'1", that, oh, you know what? Steamboat and Savage, they're about that tall. Like they stole the show. Like they went in there and they wrestled. They did really well, and they wrestled and they were athletic and this cool stuff. And like, I can't say enough about this match. Like it is one of the classics. Word gets thrown around a lot, you know, but it is a legit classic. It is a legit 5-star air quotes match. It's everything. Like it really is. It's great storytelling. It's great psychology. It's so good. It really is. And it doesn't cram it down your throat. It's not like this 45-minute fest that you got to sit through or whatever. And you get some, you know, 5 or 10 minute spots of brilliance, and then it's a headlock for a couple minutes. And then it's not like that at all. It's pretty much nonstop.
It flows.
Like, yeah, it's amazing. It's a great match.
Your terminology of blueprint was exactly what I was thinking before you said it. I said blueprint. This is a blueprint for anybody who wants to actually be a wrestler. This is what you need to see in order to understand how a match should really flow, how a match should really work. It is a blueprint for anybody who wants to get into the business, in my opinion. Also, to answer your question, it was 19 2 counts in this match, which is that's a lot. 19 2 counts. That's a lot today. I mean, for a match.
They did that spot with all these rapid 2 counts, and then then again, in most matches, they would go to a wear and hold, but they didn't. Like, they got faster. There was one point in this match where you even hear Gorilla Monsoon go, look at the speed of these guys, and they're hitting each other, and they'd been out there for over 10 minutes already, and they were doing these rapid counts, and they were getting up and shoulder blocking, cover, boom, slam, cover, boom, arm drag, cover, boom, drop kick, cover, boom, clothesline cover. I mean, so fast, and you're like, oh my God, like these guys.
The reason that's
great.
so telling from Gorilla too is because Gorilla was a former wrestler as well, and he knows that he couldn't have gone 10 minutes or more like that. And I mean, and he was a great wrestler. He was well known. Yeah, he was awesome. So for him to say that is kind of a nice.
I want to say, I think Hulk or Steamboat tells a story about when they were doing a house show loop and Steamboat was taking on Savage. I'm pretty sure this was before Mania 3. And they were, you know, getting to know each other on the house shows, Steamboat and Savage, and they were having Intercontinental Championship matches. And I don't know if Hulk did an interview before that house show, or he had another shot he did, and then he flew over to main event that house show as well, because they did that a lot. He would main event middle of the day show, and then he would fly over somewhere or whatever, or catch a bus and do a night show. So Steamboat and Savage were only going to go like 25 minutes, 30 minutes. You know, Steamboat's thing in a house show was like, people used to, Barry Windham is famous for saying like, God, I hated Steamboat in house shows. And they're like, why? He's like, because Steamboat would insist, we're going 30 tonight. You know that, right? And then like Wyndham's like, I'd be all hungover and shit from, I drank so many Jack and Cokes like the night before and I was so fucked up. And then I see on the board, fuck, I'm wrestling Steamboat. And then Steamboat's like, we're going 35, right, bro? Like, and he's like, I guess so. So Steamboat was known for on house shows, like, we're going for a while. Like, we're going to get a workout in. So Savage and Steamboat were all game for it. So they were only scheduled to do like 20 minutes, but they kept getting messages in the ring like, Hulk's delayed, like whether I can't remember if like the private jet he was taking over was late or whatever. Keep going. They ended up going like 45 minutes, and like they were like both blue around their lips. And when they get back to the back, finally they got word Hulk's here. Go ahead and go home. They go in the back or whatever, and they're all laying down. And Hulk's like, "What's wrong with you guys, brother?" Like, and just walks in or whatever. Probably did his fucking 6-minute main event, slams Bundy, and goes home. And like it was just like they were so funny. They were just like, "Oh my God!" Like laying on the floor, exhausted on the cold floor and back, just because they had to go 45 minutes out there. That's already how they knew each other, and they both were that good. And like, so people who want to shit on Macho, and I guarantee you they didn't storyboard that match out, but Savage and Steamboat probably took the best of their house show tours, and that's what they put into the storyboard. Yep. So, and at first Steamboat was kind of a dick, and like interviews, like 7-8 years later. Oh, I didn't prefer that. I'm a call in the ring guy, but I know recently he's gotten pretty emotional about saying, "Yeah, I didn't understand that." But looking back, I mean, how could you doubt this match? Like, how could you?
It's one of the greatest.
If
ever.
people still come up to him and say, like, "I remember that match. Like, it got me into wrestling," or it helped me.
Yeah.
Understand what wrestling is.
And I really don't feel like we're trying to exaggerate this and push this on.
No,
you guys.
it influenced
It
generation.
is that good.
Yeah.
It is that good. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a fucking favor, and watch this match. It's phenomenal.
History is made.
You talk about a miscarriage of justice, Monsoon. Flagrant outside interference on the part of Animal Steel.
History made here in the Silverdome, part of WrestleMania 3.
The winner of this contest.
I will not forget. I'm talking about the former Intercontinental Champion of the world, Macho Man Randy Savage.
Nothing means nothing.
Nothing
means nothing.
Nothing means nothing. What do you mean by that?
I'm talking about all the way to the top, yeah. Unjustifiably in a position that I'd rather not be in, but the cream will rise to the top, oh yeah. Macho Madness, yeah, has got more to offer than President Jack Tunney thinks that I got.
I mean, when you go back and watch Andre and Hulk, it quite frankly doesn't hold up. It sold tickets.
In my fucking heart, it holds up, Dave.
Yeah, I understand that, but you understand with the flow of match.
The mouth on this guy, huh?
Yeah, it's son of a bitch. That, but the slam is great. The stuff with Hogan is great. Hogan knows
Big
how to
moment.
knows how to go home. It is a big moment, and I agree with that.
Thank you.
But
One of the greatest moments of all time.
Thank you, cuz.
Okay,
But if you want to talk about underrated moments, you can go back in our archives and check it out.
What I'm trying to say is, get your wife to watch Macho and Savage and get her to watch Hogan and Andre, and she'll tell you what's better.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, someone who's never watched
We all know
wrestling
what's
before,
Absolutely
right?
Hulk and Andre, because people into the drama and the sweat.
They don't know the drama, bro. Let's say it. All I'm saying
I mean,
is
the women might be.
we love the Hogan Andre nostalgia. We get that. All I'm trying to say is Macho and fucking Steamboat. It just withholds the test of time.
If a fucking 5-minute bear hug doesn't get your fucking blood flowing, Dave, you're dead on the inside, my friend.
Yeah, well, I'm a little dead on the inside, but it's probably not for those reasons. Anyway,
Are you sure about that?
so
You want to talk about something? But
Steamboat in Savage's title run at 14 months, and why did we take the title off here?
Because it was they knew here they got to turn this guy face.
They knew what they were doing.
Hulk is, I gotta do a movie, brother. Like, and so
I gotta do a shitty movie, brother.
I gotta go do a shit movie, Jack. And like,
But I gotta get paid, brother.
No holds barred. So Hulk, they had plans for him to go. So the seeds are already planted here at this point to get the belt off Hulk. And
Yep.
later in '87, Ted DiBiase gets introduced to the fold, and kind of that all becomes a whole thing where they start testing Hulk and Savage together. Savage turns face. Long story short, Honky Tonk Man wins the Intercontinental Championship, so they put Steamboat leaves the company basically, and they put Savage in there to keep heat on Honky and all that stuff. And so Savage and Honky do this thing. They do some Saturday Night Main Events together, and then they kind of test the waters of Honky grabbing Elizabeth and pushing her down, and then Hulk comes out to save him and all that stuff. Well, actually, in the rematch, it all happens again. The Hart Foundation would come out and interfere on Honky's behalf, and then Elizabeth would just run away. And then Ventura's like, I knew she was going to leave. I knew she couldn't handle it. And he would do all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, out of the back, when they're triple teaming Macho Man, here comes Elizabeth holding Hulk Hogan's hand, pulling him to the ring. Help, Randy, help him. And Hulk's
comes crashing down,
Hulk's got this look on his face like, why would I help this guy? This guy's a dick to you and all that stuff. You get this whole soap opera vibe, and then Hulk would come in there and he would beat the shit out of Honky and the Hart Foundation, and him and Macho would bump back to back against each other and turn around and be like, oh, and put their fists up, and then they fucking shook hands and the mega power, it all started. So they
once again, I'm not sure if the theme music hits, but I in my mind, like we talked about last week, Hogan's theme
Two
music
Cold
hits.
Scorpios music does not hit. No, Elizabeth just pulled him out of the back, and it wasn't like a rundown save. It was Elizabeth pulling him by his hand, and Hulk had that look like, where are you pulling me to? It's so funny if you go back and look. It's like Hogan didn't know, like, where are you taking me? Like, well, to the ring, obviously, dipshit. Like, he's out there in the middle of the crowd and he's still looking around like, what? I was in the shower and she came and got me.
Good,
winkety dink.
So, and definitely the mega powers are starting to form here more so. But a couple of things.
Drink this, brother.
Not to gloss over too quick. Macho starts. Obviously, he's chasing Honky for the title the whole time. but he's also beating the likes of Hercules, big deal, Harley Race, Killer Khan, things like that. And then that storyline leads to that WWF title being vacated over an infamous
Well,
event.
and before that, he was doing like cool stuff. Like he would, get in there and he was like this confused Macho Man. Like, he was a face now, so he has to do face things. So you would see him struggle at the end of a match and he's like, I hold the rope for a woman. And he'd hold the rope and because Elizabeth always used to hold the rope for him and he'd get in there and do his twirl or whatever.
Yeah.
But then now he's faced Macho Man. So like she would hold the rope for him and then he would hold it for her. And then the place would fucking erupt like when he would do that. And this made him likable to the crowd. So now you're like, he wasn't a monster after all. He's just misunderstood. And like, it was just the dynamic between the two. I can't stress. Yes, Elizabeth was a huge part. I feel Macho Man would have gotten over on his own anyway if Elizabeth never came aboard or never was a thing. But like, they were meant for each other. And Savage just happened to be talented in the ring, so he was able to carry it far. Because if you can't go in the ring, you're only going to go so far with characters. I mean, even though having a good character can get you kind of far, but you still got to know what you're doing in there for the most part. So it was really cool to kind of watch that. And then you wanted to root for him because you're like, now Hulk's involved and kind of putting a stamp of approval on him. Now he's treating women better. And he's like, let me hold the door for you, bitch. I mean, classy lady. And it was all making sense. It all just worked. Such a great heel to face turn.
We knock on that, but Macho's much smarter than that. He's like, I know I know what I'm doing, brother. So we're going to talk about the tournament at WrestleMania 4, but we can't talk about that until we talk about really a storyline that builds, in my opinion, over a year to year and a half. When you talk about the infamous event with Hogan and Andre.
Can I dispel a shitty rumor first?
On
I mean,
Saturday
I
Night's
don't mean
main event.
It's a stupid rumor that Macho was supposed to win the Intercontinental Championship from Honky at February 5 on the main event, which was a huge milestone. It was Hulk and Andre 2, February 5, 1988.
Yeah.
It was live. It wasn't a Saturday Night's main event. It was called the main event. They were on Friday night, primetime NBC, 8 p.m. Over 15 million households tuned in to see it, which equated to like 32 or 33 million people watching Hulk versus Andre 2. The match that opened up the live broadcast, Macho Man against Honky for the IC title. Rumor has it is that Macho was supposed to win the IC belt. And
bullshit.
And Honky threw a fit and refused.
It's not true.
And so they changed the plans, and then out of nowhere, they made Macho win the tournament at WrestleMania 4 and the heavyweight title. And no. If Honky was being that big of a dick in the background and refused, don't you think Vince would have taken it off him like a month later?
Yeah. No, I
or Vince would have said, no, you're fucking losing tonight, whether I have to like edit footage, whatever, right? Like, so it didn't matter. What happened was Honky, I'm sure, contested it. And there was a time where, they talk about shit in meetings and stuff like, hey, what you want to put the IC belt on Savage? What do you think about putting the heavyweight title on DiBiase, Intercontinental Championship on Savage? No, let's not do that or whatever. And maybe Honky caught wind and said, I don't think so. Like, I'm still hot, guys. Like, I'm a real hot heel. Put me with somebody else. You got your self-made guy in Savage, because Hulk was going to go away. A lot of people are saying that, well, the original plan was for Macho to not win the championship. DiBiase wins the title and then chase DiBiase while Hulk's gone. Hulk comes back, wins the title from DiBiase. No. DiBiase was never in the cards to win the heavyweight title, guys. They wouldn't have done the whole thing where Andre wins it, submits it to him, then it gets stripped from him.
No.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
when you look at the storyline, it made total sense. Hulk wasn't going to win it back, or he wouldn't have lost it to begin with, right? When you think of wrestling storyline-wise. Then DiBiase wouldn't have won it because he's a heel, and WWF heels didn't necessarily go over all the time. It was a babyface territory. So Hulk's leaving, so you're going to put it on a face. It makes sense. Honky never refused. Somebody might have overheard him saying, I don't think I should lose it.
And they wouldn't have taken it from DiBiase just to put it back on at WrestleMania
right.
4.
And they wouldn't have changed everything. Honky, you don't want to lose to Macho? Haha, joke's on you, because now we're going to make Savage win the tournament at Mania 4. Oh, man, the honky-tonk man messed up on that one. No, like, what the fuck? And then Honky reigned for another, 5 months before Warrior beat him. So it's like, this, ladies and gentlemen, I don't care what you read. I don't care what some drunk over-the-hill talent says on some stupid fucking shoot interview. It was all planned like this. Macho was planned to take the throne while Hulk was gone and be champion. That's it. And plus, he had Elizabeth in his corner. It made sense to do that. You put this guy on top. This is what you do.
4 and 5. War of 1812 was nothing. Yeah, the Boston Garden. I remember it. Yeah, flare for dramatic, an old flame from the past. Yeah, I'm talking. We were there together, Boston Garden. Yeah, the Celtics. Yeah. You, Larry Bird, you're inside me sometimes, aren't you? I'm dribbling down that aisle. Elizabeth will lead me down that aisle. We're going right to the squared circle, taking you home.
So I think that's pretty much
and
we ran that one right into the beach, right? So we get it. I totally agree. There's no way that was we had to change plans, because if we even remotely entertain that, we would be saying that the best storyline over the next year and a half, in my opinion, in history,
right,
was just ad-libbed.
And
bullshit.
it was like you're saying, a year in the making. They knew
exactly,
and they were, before they even put the title on Hulk or on Macho Man.
They knew where it was going.
You and Hulk are going to face next year. They knew where it was going.
They knew it. And that's what we're gonna talk about real quick. So but before we get into that year and a half storyline, we have to talk about just briefly Hogan and Andre on Saturday Night's Main Event. So I don't know, because you've been kind of quiet over. You want to talk about what happened?
The rematch? Are we talking about?
Yeah, Hogan Andre 2.
The main event.
The main event. I'm sorry, it's in my notes. You know what? Every note I look into says Saturday Night's Main Event, and I know it's not.
The main event is
it's
the live
14 million, right?
It was 15 million
15
households.
million. There
with
you
like
go.
33 million people watching.
There you go.
Well, go ahead. I mean,
oh, okay. Well, shit, I'll cover it real quick. God damn, this is fun. So what basically happened was Hogan and Andre are facing off again, and we have a controversial pin, to say the least. We have Hogan basically just taking Hogan to the floor like in a mid slam. Wasn't even a full slam, because at this point Andre was not quite getting somebody that big completely over his head to slam him. Brings him to the ground, pins him. You can clearly see that Hogan's shoulder gets up well before the third pinfall coming down. And Hogan's like, "What are you doing? What's going on? It's way controversial. You've got all this stuff coming down." Everybody's arguing, everybody's fighting. And in the midst of that, you see two things happen, and you can correct me on the order if I'm wrong on the order, but you basically see this is where you find out that the Hebners. There's actually twin brothers referees, right? We didn't know this at the time, but they basically were saying that $1 Million Man paid this person to get plastic surgery, look like Earl Hebner, come down and pin him on the 1, 2, 3. And then you see the real Earl Hebner come down to talk to his brother, which wasn't really his brother in the storyline, and they get into it, meaning that this was all a paid thing to actually strip Hogan of the title maliciously. And that's when Andre, we find out that Andre is completely paid off as well, and he hands the title to the $1 Million Man.
It was reverse order, and before Heenan actually sold Andre to DiBiase in a sense. Before it was known, so he was just like, "You take him, DiBiase," And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to use him to defeat Hogan, and then he's going to give me the belt." So they telegraphed it.
Yeah.
He said from the beginning, DiBiase, "I bought Andre so he could beat Hulk, and he's going to give me the championship." So right after Andre pinned him, Andre gets up there, and I want to say calls it the tag team championship by accident, because Andre just
Andre's French and
liked his wine, didn't give a shit. So he sat out there and he surrendered the title to DiBiase. DiBiase has the title. They start leaving. That's when Hulk turns around and realizes there's two Dave Hebners in there pointing at each other.
These guys, wait a minute, they look just alike. They look just alike. The guy on the right's Hebner, isn't it? No, the left is Hebner. Wait,
so that particular storyline ends up vacating the title. Vacant once again gets another title run. How many times has Vacant held the title at this point? It's on Twitter. I know 50-something titles. Vacant.
He's the greatest wrestler of all time.
Yeah, the greatest title holder ever. Like, just triumphing fucking Flair's record. Vacant, 57 plus time champion. Anyway, this creates a tournament at WrestleMania 4 for the WWF heavyweight title.
Hulk Hogan's 4-year run.
We're not talking. We talked about Hogan enough, bitch.
4 years,
brother. This is a Macho Man.
Hey, give it to him. He defended the Warrior a lot.
Yeah,
4 years.
Yeah, never happened. It'll never happen again. By the way,
think about 4 years, Dave.
It's a long time.
That's a term for a president.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
That was doable.
Can we not?
Those years, though.
Can we not get into that shit?
4 years Hulk Hogan was president of the United States.
By the way, at WrestleMania 4, Macho goes through Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh, fuck.
Goes through a gauntlet of matches featuring the likes of Butch Reed, Greg Valentine, the One Man Gang, and finally defeating the $1 Million Man in the final.
Bullshit. I thought DiBiase was supposed to win because Honky refused.
Oh, God. Could you imagine in hindsight the $1 Million Man holding the heavyweight title? I mean, really?
Who?
Yeah, exactly.
Who? No.
Could you imagine the $1 Million Man holding the heavyweight title
just
for a period of time?
pinning him?
And
DiBiase, elbow drop. 1, 2, he got him. That's Booker T's music. I don't know why. $1 million dance. In the background.
I don't care. I don't care.
Horrible mashed up WWE ones.
I firmly believe that the Harlem Heat soundtrack is the soundtrack that everybody hears in their mind when they think of a wrestler coming down the ring.
That is a great soundtrack
on the
or
side
track.
Note, the network, how if they don't have the copyrights, they play generic.
Yeah,
whatever.
I hate that.
I think instead of doing generic music, it should be Booker T's music. I think
why not? They already bought it.
That
That's all you
song
have to do.
is fucking amazing.
So like when Hulk Hogan comes out to Voodoo Child, obviously they don't have the rights to Voodoo Child, so it's just we're coming for you, Dan.
So it reminds me of like 96, 97 summertime, watching WCW as a kid.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, just like when I hear a song, it makes me think back. I think back to those times, especially during the summertime when we're off from school. We'd watch it every week. Be all excited, play with our little wrestling toys.
So
and the Macho Man was there, later on, Macho Man.
Yeah, and there you go. And that brief little win, Macho, he gets a little help from Hogan, and that's where Hogan basically puts the stamp on him, endorses him as the champion.
And then people also shit on this moment too, because they're like, why did Hulk have to be involved? It was all just a storyline.
Yeah.
Again, they knew what they were going to do in a year.
Exactly.
But also Hulk was defending him. Andre was down at ringside that match, and Hulk wasn't. And they did the whole same thing where Andre kept hooking Savage's leg when he go over, and it was DiBiase beating the shit out of Savage. He had Virgil and Andre in his corner. So, of course, Elizabeth leaves halfway through and comes back with the Hulkster.
He clobbered him in. Dollar Man. Down he went. The referee did not see it. That's terrible, Monsoon. I can't believe Hogan would stoop to that level. DiBiase is out cold. Savage looking around, doesn't know.
So, it's funny how they did so much less because they didn't have these tournaments and matches for WrestleMania 5, but the storyline, which we'll get into, was so much more.
Well, and it made
so
sense.
much more.
He
made way more sense.
Other three opponents fairly.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it doesn't make sense.
But I mean, the people who were critiquing it, DiBiase had a bye, so like a heel. He's a chicken shit. He got a got a match off. And then he was doing everything to win, and then they bring Hulk down. Hulk hits DiBiase with a chair.
Yeah, no problem.
And
that's
Savage pins him. And I'm like, well, because Andre and Virgil were double teaming the shit out of him.
Yeah, they're interfering. I totally agree.
Fucking Hogan has to be in the main event again. I'm like, oh my God, you just don't.
No, you're setting it up for your
cash cow. So why would you not at that point put the rub on him?
And
I'm sick of it.
As many people say, Hogan must pose at the end. So, but. I mean,
he does enough shit to make himself look stupid. Let the good things that Hulk did fucking speak for himself.
And it's fine. All I'm saying, I'm not trying to say that the Hogan thing was a problem. All I'm saying is if you had to pick which WrestleMania you're going to watch, 4 or 5, you're going to pick 5. Even though
it was all built to that. This was, of course, title on
that's
Savage.
what I'm saying.
And it wasn't to shit on him. So, and this is another one too. All Vince wanted to do was have a placeholder. And it kind of turned out to be much more because people actually ended up liking Macho Man than I think more than they thought they would. And they knew they would like Macho a lot. But the Hulk was off TV for 3.5, 4 months, basically. Yeah. Savage was on the house show loop, rematching DiBiase.
It's so funny you're saying that because that's actually in my notes. I was talking about some expected the gate to actually drop with Hogan being replaced at the top, but it really didn't happen. I mean, many argue that Hogan was still around, but that was really just on TV. And house shows, Macho Man was the main draw for all those house shows, and he really drew. I mean,
and
he
Hulk was off TV for 3 months.
Yeah, he was still
after
off
Mania
TV
4. He leaves, and you don't see him anymore.
Mm-hmm. But then when you do see him, it's only
for
TV.
SummerSlam,
yeah. He wasn't advertised in the house shows for a while, nothing like that, because he was working a ton on a shitty movie, quite frankly.
He was fucking tired.
And Macho defended the title everywhere. He held it for over a year,
for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
He carried the promotion on his back.
And like I said, this starts, in my opinion, the greatest storyline of all time. I'm talking about the Mega Powers and the explosion of said tag team, which leads to the rematch at WrestleMania. I'm sorry, not the rematch, to a match for that title for Hogan v Savage at WrestleMania 5. Hogan had a hand in helping Macho Man win the title. We talked about it, and they were inseparable for the next year, at least on television, right?
And they walk right into that summer of '88. The first ever SummerSlam was the Mega Powers versus the Mega Bucks.
Oh yeah,
Hulk and Macho Man officially becoming the Mega Powers and taking on DiBiase and Andre. That's where Elizabeth, like, you see what wrestling became with women, like in the future. And Elizabeth she had like this little skirt on, she a gold and red skirt or
the
whatever.
bloomers, bro.
And then she takes a little skirt off and she has like this full butted bikini on, like,
yeah.
Oh, and everyone's like, oh my God, like at the end of it.
She took off her dress. She took off her skirt.
And so like people freaked out, and even like Monsoon and Ventura acted like, oh my, I'm a boner, like, and all that. It's just crazy and so funny to go back and watch. That's all she did was take this skirt off, and it's like a full butted, completely appropriate bikini. Like, and it was like so great, like, because everyone's like, oh, so she distracted Andre and DiBiase, and then Hulk and Savage took over, and they double teamed DiBiase, and Savage dropped the elbow, Hulk drops the leg, 1, 2, 3, bam. They celebrate, everything's good, except what they didn't tell you until a couple of months later was, how Macho Man used to put Elizabeth up on his shoulder at the end of the match. So Hulk helped Elizabeth up onto his shoulder.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all you saw. But later, we'll get into it.
That's
it all plays in. It starts here.
This is where,
they didn't talk about on the air, but comes back later.
Eventually, they all get pointed out to you.
Beautiful storytelling.
We want to elaborate on it. So there's little things. Hogan putting his hand on really Elizabeth's, like, almost like hip, but you touched her inappropriately.
Well, and then I'll fire past it. Then you go to Survivor Series that year, where it was Hulk Hogan and Macho Man co-captaining, and they defeat DiBiase's team and all that stuff. And then at the end, same thing. They win. And Hulk comes up and he hugs Elizabeth and twirls around with her. And then you see actually Savage, unlike SummerSlam where nothing was said about it.
You see him going.
Then you see Savage is in the corner, like having a scowl on his face, looking at Hulk and pointing at him. And then kind of goes over to Elizabeth and you see him lip like, what's going on? And then after that, Hulk comes up and, oh, we won. And then Macho Man snaps out of it and they celebrate. So now they start planting the little seeds. Now you see it on TV where they're doing it on purpose. They're starting to show a rift. Then you fast forward to Royal Rumble 89, where both Hulk and Savage are in it. Savage was feuding with Bad News Brown at this point. Hulk was feuding with Boss Man and Akeem. And so they get in there where they're both in the ring at the same time. And then I think Savage is fighting in the corner with Bad News the whole time. And then Hulk is on the other side of the ring. He cleans house, eliminates. He just sees Bad News Brown, who kind of has Macho Man like almost over, and then he scoops Bad News Brown up and tips them both out. So Savage comes back in pissed off because Hulk eliminated him, and he points Hulk, puts his finger right in Hulk's face, and Hulk slaps his finger out of his face, and they start arguing, whatever. Elizabeth comes down, calms them down. But again, now it's an obvious, we're, fueling this fire. This smoke is going to become a fire pretty soon. So then they shake hands. The place goes nuts. Hulk stays in the Royal Rumble a little bit longer, gets eliminated. And so now it's something they start talking about on TV. Oh, they're all fine. They're fine. Everything's
Who
fine.
won that Rumble, by the way?
Big John Studd.
The first Royal Rumble ever won by Big fucking John Studd. So that's where we get into another infamous, I would say, is it main event or?
It's the main event.
The main event, yeah. So we're getting into the next main event, and we have the Mega Powers going against the Twin Towers. Am I right on that? Yeah. The Twin Towers. We have Akeem, formerly One Man Gang. What a change, right? I love when he did his little lock and pop steps.
Not racist at all.
No, not at all. It's fine. It's all good. Big pictures of Africa on his on his costume and shit. Fantastic stuff. And the big boss man, right? A real true tough guy too, I think, in a lot of ways. And anyways, in that match, we have a really fantastic segment where Elizabeth gets hurt and everything kind of falls off the rail by storyline. Jess, can you get into that on the specifics? I know you tell that better than I do.
This is super cool.
It's really good.
If you go back and watch it, they do this spot where Akeem throws Macho Man out through the middle rope and he just fucking gets thrown straight into Elizabeth. And it was not a puss fall at all. It wasn't like a feather, fall at all. It was he crashed into her and she hits her head on the ground and everything. It's pretty cool the way they did it. They timed it perfect. And it looked really good. So now she's sprawled out. Macho Man sprawled out. Hulk comes down. He, of course, starts tending to her. But again, they're kind of fueling it to where it's okay, now he's ignoring the match and he's just taking care of Elizabeth. And so he picks her up and he takes her to the back and leaves Macho Man all by himself. And then you just see Macho Man like pointing back to Hulk, like, where are you going? What are you doing? And then Boss Man and Akeem are double teaming him and all that stuff. And then so Hulk takes it in the back. And this is where you start getting into the backstage vignettes, which hadn't really been done. Yeah, they've done backstage interviews and they did like the silly vignettes where like Steamboat's learning how to talk, but like this is the live camera following them back. You never really saw like behind in the locker room. So they follow Hulk and Elizabeth back there. The medics are putting Elizabeth on a, little bed, medical bed, trying to, she wakes up eventually and he's like, oh my God. And they go to commercial. Then they come back from commercial and you see Hulk like holding her hand, like, oh, Elizabeth, please be okay. Please be okay. And then she wakes up. She's like, oh my God, where's Randy?
Brother.
Why? Where's Randy? Why are my pants off? Where's Randy?
Whoa, hey,
and then he's like,
Don't worry about that, brother.
Just drink this, brother. You weren't supposed to wake up.
It's Elizabeth's brother.
Are we Liz Hive, brother? Oh shit! Like so they do that. I'm so fucking terrible. Why is it that I go to the lowest common
Brother.
Take its course, brother.
That's what I do here.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
So they do that, and then they keep cutting back to the match where Macho Man's getting like double teamed by Boss Man and Akeem, and he's getting his ass beat. And even Ventura's like, "Oh, I see that Hogan deserted his partner and all that stuff." So finally, Elizabeth's like, "Where's Randy? He's out in the ring." Oh, duh. I came to help you. And then Elizabeth's like, "Go, just go." And so Hulk runs out there. Fucking
stop touching you.
Give me my pants and get out. And he's like, all right, but
You are a much better actor than Elizabeth. I'll say that. Just go.
Let's get out.
Just go and take care of him.
Give me my clothes and leave. I asked you 100 times. And so like he leaves and he comes back out to the ring. He gets on the apron. He's like, all right, Macho. I just got a quick nooner, brother. Come on, brother. Like, and he's all jazzed up on the ring. And then so Macho finally gets the advantage. And then he comes up and you think he's going to tag Hulk. And then he slaps Hulk across the face.
Hey, that's a legal tag, brother.
Yes. So Hulk's legally in at this point. And it's so, look, I don't wish harm upon anybody. Okay. I know sexual assault is wrong. Can we just, everyone just pretend I didn't say that?
Smell my finger, brother.
That's fucking terrible. That's terrible. I'm glad you said that, because now people can see what a saint I am. What a horrible bastard you are. So
it was consent.
So Macho slaps him or whatever, and Hulk's like, "What's going on?" And all this, and Macho's like, "You left me" or whatever. Macho storms to the back. Hulk's getting double teamed. So then they go back to the back where Macho Man's yelling at Elizabeth, going, "Why did you leave?" And she's like, "I don't even remember what happened. He just said try this cookie, and that's the last thing I remember." And that's it. And I woke up and I was wearing a weird outfit and I was wearing a maid's costume. And Macho Man's like, exactly, I told you. So he's all mad because you guys both deserted me. He's jealous of me, blah, blah, blah. So the match wraps up. Hulk, I don't remember if Hulk pins someone or he wins by DQ or whatever, but he escapes. And he goes to the back and he comes back and confronts him and he's like, where'd you go? Why'd you slap me? And he's like, oh, you've always been jealous of me. So it's just really cool backstage vignette. This is it. Like they're exploding right here. And he just pretty much says like, you've always been jealous of me. You're not a man. If you wanted to come at me like a man, you didn't have to try to take my girl. You could just ask me if you want a title shot. You know, I'd beat you anyway. Like you're jealous of me. And then Hulk looks at Elizabeth. He's like, Elizabeth, try and talk some sense into this guy. And then Macho blinds him with the title and hits him right in the face with the title and knocks him over.
Let me tell you something about Hulkamania. Yeah, Macho Man, this is talking to you. You're wrong, man. You're wrong. No, you're way out of line. No, you're out of line. And let me tell you why you're out of line. You got jealous eyes right there. Right there, you're looking at me with jealous eyes because you're a former champion. Hulkamania is just in the win. I was carrying you. I'm not number 3 in the Mega Powers. I'm number 1. You guys got me in the backseat. You're way out of line. No, hold on. Wait a minute. Hold on. No, just slow down, man. Hold on. Slow down. Wait a minute. No, you're way out of line. No, man to man, you never asked me for a title shot. You know why? Elizabeth? Because you can't beat me.
I think just a few things to elaborate on that whole segment. There's so many flubs in that live portion. They fucked up so bad. Like Hogan asked for a count, right? In Carney when he's already live. That's number 1. And then number 2, I think Jess talked about this with me recently and talked about Brutus coming in at totally like way too fucking early because Brutus, the barber beefcake, was supposed to break it up. And he came in like fucking 30 seconds too early and then he thought, oh, I'll just be smart about it. I'll come in at the right time, but I'll take my shirt off so they won't know I was the same person that walked in on camera and came back to break up Hogan and Macho. It's just, it was so bad. But funny about it is like no one really cared. We didn't realize it. We were just kids. We didn't understand it was it was messed up. But in hindsight, you look at it and you're like, oh, they fucked that up pretty bad.
This was all live. This was not Saturday Night's Main Event. It was called The Main Event. It was live, primetime NBC. So they're doing all these backstage vignettes live, which is what they do all the time now. But this was like really a first. They didn't pre-tape it, which you would think they would have, but they didn't. They just did it all live. And so they're back here in like this locker room. And so here's what was supposed to happen. What's supposed to happen was Macho Man hits him with the belt, mounts on top of Hulk like a UFC fighter and starts punching him. Then Brutus Beefcake is supposed to come in and be like, what are you doing, Macho Man? And then Macho Man gets up and punches him and Beefcake falls out of camera. So what this dipshit did was Macho hits him with the belt, but before Macho could mount him, here comes Beefcake, and he had like a shirt on and his wrestling tights on, a shirt and wrestling tights on. So he comes in, and then you see Macho kind of look at him like, what the fuck you doing? Like, and then Beefcake leaves, and just for a second, he's like, and he just leaves, and he just gets off camera. Then Macho mounts him and starts punching him, and then Beefcake comes in, this time with no shirt on, because genius Beefcake is like, well, I fucked up right there, but if I take my shirt off, nobody will know it's Beefcake, considering he's wearing tights with like shreds, like all down him, and it's unmistakably, like, it's total Brutus Beefcake. There's no mistaking this. So on live TV, he pops in real quick. He's like, oh, shit, and like leaves, and you see him. And then like Macho Man gets on Hulk and starts punching him. Then Beefcake comes in with, I'll take my shirt off. Takes his shirt off, comes in. Macho Man punches him and gets him out of the thing. The second flub is after that happens, Macho leaves. They go to commercial. But so they're live again. So some director is supposed to be there in the locker room while they're airing commercials and be like, all right, guys, we're coming back live in 5, 4, 3, and do the whole thing. So the director forgot to count down. So they went back live. Hulk is casually standing by the wall, and you kind of see him go, do. And then he speaks carny talk. You know how, like, Snoop Dogg says, for shizzle, man, izzle, and all that stuff. He didn't create that talk. Snoop Dogg legitly has been a wrestling fan for years. That talk is called wrestling carny talk. And they talk like that when they're around like autograph sessions. When they used to keep kayfabe, they used to talk like that around fans. So they'd be like, you going to the hotizzle? Like, and that would just be real quick, like, are you going to the hotel? Which if they would say that in front of a fan back in like 1980 something, like, hey, heel, are you going to go back to the hotel? Yeah, no problem, man. See you there. Like, they didn't want fans to hear that. So they would speak like this izzle talk or this carny talk. So Hulk is live on TV. Nobody counted him down. So he's like, doing his nails and shit. And then he looked around at the director off screen. He's like, hey, what's the tizzle? And they're just like, you hear someone say something. He's like, oh, Macho Man. And then he gets in character and starts walking down the hall. Oh, it's great. Of course, all of this is cut off the network, but you can find it on YouTube. It's fucking great. Like the live TV folks, like they did end up mastering it because, they do Raw live every week, and there's, considering how much they do live TV now, there's very little fuck ups when you think about it. But back here, like, it was
more
really
polished
funny.
now.
It's one of the most famous scenes in wrestling history in the sense of the breaking up of them, but there were so many technical fuck ups. Like, it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously that leads to, oh shit, let me roll back up here. Hold on for just 1 second. That actually leads to our WrestleMania 5 match. Great match. Maybe I say good match. It all I have to say is I don't want to talk too much about it because we already know what it was going to. We already know that Savage was going to lose to Hogan. That was the plan for over a year and a half from when all this started. When he basically lost the title to Steamboat at WrestleMania 3, when that's the IC title, we knew that's where it was going in hindsight, right? So the match was good, but it never will live up to the storyline they built for a year and a half. I don't think any match really could. It'd be very difficult, but it was a very good, well told story in the ring. And Hogan's off to his next title run.
Well, and the build up to this was great too, because this is when all the footage came in. So leading up to Mania, they would just, every week on Superstars would be like, let's hear from the champion. Let's hear from the challenger. And then this is where Macho would do an interview going, Hulk Hogan, I'm so sick of your lust. And you could see like
Greenstein and hot dogging.
Yeah, he's full on heel. And they would tease like whose corner is Elizabeth going to be in? It's going to be Macho Man. It's going to be Hulk. So that all this stuff going on leading up to Mania 5.
And that pushed Macho back to a full heel.
Check this clip out. And it would be the clip from when they won at SummerSlam.
Yeah.
And Hulk would help her up on the shoulder, but then Macho would pause it right when Hulk's hands on her ass.
Touch
be like, see right there.
Touch your butt, brother.
Right there. I count 1, 2, 3, 4 fingers. Where's your pinky, brother?
No.
He didn't say that. So he
Smell
would
my pinky, brother.
They would tease like that, and then Hulk would have an interview either the next week or right after, going, Macho, you like to distort this, brother. We were best friends, brother. Here's the real footage, and it would just show it happening, and it actually was nothing at all. And so they would do cool stuff like that, where again, 6 months before this happened, they taped stuff on purpose that they knew we're going to use this for Macho to play to make it look like Hulk was making a move on Elizabeth and moving in on his territory. It was just genius. It was great storytelling. I can't talk enough about it.
Does nothing but lie, brother love. And you told some of the biggest lies that I've ever heard of in my whole life. I love him like a brother. It's a lie, Hulk Hogan, and that's enough to get me hot. But what you said to Elizabeth is enough to get me to the boiling point. Yeah, I love Elizabeth. Hulk Hogan, you say you love Elizabeth? Well, I got news for you, man. Yeah, I got news for you. Elizabeth is gonna be in the corner of the Macho Man Randy Savage at WrestleMania 5. Yeah, and let me tell you something. You say you love me like a brother. Well, listen to this, Hulk Hogan.
I thought it was a very good match. I think a couple things went wrong in this match. I think that, first of all, the acoustics of the Trump Plaza were terrible. So they had WrestleMania 4 and 5 at the Trump Plaza Hotel and Casino, the Trump Arena, where they had a lot of boxing. And just the acoustics were terrible. And in Atlantic City, it wasn't necessarily a wrestling hotbed. So a lot of whales and stuff, and for people who don't know, whales are not heavy people. They are people who bet a lot. So a lot of the tickets in the front row and all on the floor were comped and given to the whales. And so a lot of people, and you could see Donald Trump in the front row with his wife at the time. And they were sitting there. Was it Ivana Trump at this time? I don't remember who it was.
No,
I don't remember.
It doesn't
No,
matter.
Ivana's with her now, right? I don't even know.
Ivanka,
Who's president? I have no idea. So
your mom.
No, she'd do a much better job.
She really would.
So
question that is. What a stupid question. But I watch you a lot. You ask a lot of stupid questions.
If you're listening, we love you.
President. So it was just the acoustics were terrible. It wasn't like you couldn't hear anything. It didn't sound like the crowd was into it because they kind of weren't. Half the tickets were comped. So the whole front row was just non-energetic and dead and all that stuff. And so the WrestleMania 4 and 5 were not known for their acoustics. It just sounded like a dead show. So that was one strike against him. Strike 2 was Hulk bladed in the match, but he didn't blade good enough. So by the end of the match, it was pretty much almost wiped off his face. So the whole thing was for Macho to make Hulk bleed and beat him up a little bit and kind of get sympathy on Hulk. And then, Hulk would win in the end. So that the psychology in the match kind of got ruined by those two things I just mentioned. But really, it was a good match. It was a really solid match. And Elizabeth was in a neutral corner and, all that stuff. And they did this whole thing. And it was a really well thought out match and everything. And it was a solid match. They did some things to each other that they normally didn't do on TV. And so it was really cool. And Hulk beats him and pretty much did the classic kick out of the elbow drop, Hulk up, big boot, leg drop, done. Yeah. And that was the way it was all planned. And Macho Man left or whatever, and was just pissed off, and you could tell I will return and all that stuff. So Hulk would win his second WWF championship here.
A couple of sidebars to this that I think is pretty fascinating. One not so fascinating. We'll talk about that first. Like you said, Elizabeth neutral corner. This leads to Savage going with Sensational Sherry going forward for a true back to heel run, and there's no better.
Sherry
escort
was great too
to do that as an escort.
Sherry was great.
The other thing that is quite fascinating in my mind that people forget about: Macho Man was carrying a huge staph infection at this time, and actually that's why his elbow was completely taped up and was in the hospital trying to get over a staph infection. Checks himself out of the hospital because there's no fucking way you're missing WrestleMania.
Nowadays, that would never happen.
Yeah, they would have to cancel.
Yeah, they would literally. There's no way you could wrestle with a staph infection.
So he straight up he checks himself out of the hospital, tapes up his elbow, and puts on a really good match to try to rival that storyline as best as possible. But there were some things riding against them, and it is Macho v Hogan. I would say it's a good match, but if you really had to put a match together, like you wouldn't like to make a great match, you wouldn't put Hogan and Savage together to make a great match. It was still a very good match, but I still find it fascinating that he came in there with a freaking staph infection, could have died, and still carried that match on.
But
and
it also had good storytelling to go along with.
Of course,
good.
And I want to
match.
kill another
sure.
shit rumor. Or it wasn't even. It's not even a rumor. It's now that fans, the smarties,
hindsight
like
bullshit.
to look back on this and be like,
it's like what
Hulk, Savage should have beat Hulk. I mean, no. And I'll tell you why. And I'll be really quick about it too. So when I was in high school, I was in drama, right? And I was in, most of the leads of the plays. And I'm not trying to shower myself with praises. I just was in drama and I was the lead and all that stuff. So the last play I was going to do my senior year was West Side Story. So I can sing decently. I can hold a tune, but I can't hit those notes. For those who don't know that story, Tony was the lead role. So I was very insecure about myself. So what I decided to do was, and I'm equating this to wrestling, so hopefully people will pick up on the metaphor. I decided to politic in the back, and I went to the director, who was my drama teacher, in private, and I said, hey, look, I've never directed before. See, every show he would have what's called a stage manager, which is like assistant director. And he would always choose a student, and you would get that experience. So I was like, I've never been your stage manager before. I'd love to be your stage manager. I've never done that. And he kind of looked at me, and he was just like, okay. Can I give you some advice? And I'm like, yeah. And the only reason why I played this card was to get him to show his cards. Because if he was like, yeah, that sounds great, I'd be like, okay, he wasn't going to cast me in the role that I was going to try out for anyway. So I'll just, save myself the embarrassment of auditioning and not getting it, right? Instead of just knowing that that's a life lesson. And sometimes you get things, sometimes you don't. It's life. Me, I just tried to play politics because I was being a shithead and I'm not proud of it. And I wanted to get.
I would be proud of it. It's smart.
Well, I mean, it was just something that I don't think should be. But it's to emulate the politics in the backstage of a wrestling locker room. Of course, my point. So I went and I played the politics, and I was like, basically, if he's like, sure, that sounds good, Jess. I'd be like, okay, I'm glad I didn't do it, because I was going to embarrass myself and not get the role, and then I maybe wouldn't have even gotten stage manager. So then he looked at me and he was like, can I tell you something, give you some advice? Yeah, I just want you to audition like you were. What role were you going to audition for? I was like, well, Tony, obviously. He's like, I would just say, keep doing what you're doing. Okay. So I did, and I got the part, and I knew I couldn't hit the notes. I knew I couldn't. So afterwards I went and talked to him, and I said, hey, and he's like, hey, can I tell you, and I'm paraphrasing, can I tell you why I did what I did? And the guy that I was up against Tony with could sing really well. Yeah. And he could sing so much better than me, and he could hit all the notes with ease, and I struggled and all that stuff. He was like, I had a choice to make. He's like, I know you can act really well. And Tony has some really heavy, serious lines, and he's a serious role in this. It's a musical, West Side Story. So yeah, but I know you can sing okay. You can sing decent. So I know with some coaching, you can hit the notes I need you to hit, but you can act well. So I have confidence in you. If I casted him, he could sing really well, and that would be great. But when it came to acting and stuff, he would be so bad. And again, he didn't say these exact words, but it was something around like this fashion. He would not be good enough to where it would kind of take people out of the emotion. When you see bad acting, you're like, oh, I'm just taken out of this moment, So I was like, oh, okay. And I learned back then that, wow, as a director, he made a choice. So Vince has a choice, is my point. I'm equating Vince to my director. Vince had a choice here. So what do? Do I take the guy that I know is my mega babyface, the guy that help me tear the territorial walls down and take my company from this regional success to this nationwide success? Now it's 1989. Hulk is more than a proven commodity at this point. And he's the biggest thing. He's a household name. He's just as big as Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's the same level of people. Oh yeah, that's Hulk Hogan. Even people who didn't like wrestling. Oh, that's Hulk. They knew who he was. So do I have my guy who's really good at two things? I know he could be a heel because he was a heel for me and a very successful one at that. And then he became a face when Hulk was gone, and he was very successful at that. So what do? Do I beat Hulk and risk having Hulk chase him throughout the summer and have it not be very good? Because Hulk's character in any other wrestling territory, that would have worked, right? You chase the heel, and the face doesn't necessarily all win it. I mean, he might win it every now and then, and that's a big moment, but it's always about the chase, right? The baby face would chase the heel champion. That's what other promotions would do. Vince was all about the baby faces. So Vince is like, do I just go against my own formula that I've made this past 5 years? Or do I put the title back on my mega baby face, turn the guy heel again, who I know can play heel, and ride that out and put him in with a different person or get him in a different feud or whatever? I could do so many different things. Or do I risk like having Macho Man beat Hulk, a heel beat Hulk, and then have that kill Hulk's image, his appeal, his draw, because I've booked him to be like this unbeatable guy. The only way he got his title took off him was from twin fucking referees, right? Like he couldn't get beat fair. Not even a giant could beat him. And so that's what you do. So director Vince McMahon said, I'm going to cast the right role with the right actor, and I'm not going to screw myself. Why would I do that? Just to make things quote unquote interesting, or the other way around. Bruce talks on his podcast, we should have turned Hulk heel. No, again, this is 1989. You do not know that is going to work. You have no idea that that's going to work. So hindsight is whatever you want to say it is. So a lot of the smart marks now and all the smarties like to say, because they like Savage, and I like Savage too, and I think he's fantastic. And, it's easy to hate on Hulk now and all that stuff. But no, Vince made the right choice. You go with your cash cow and your mega baby face. Vince made the right choice. So anybody who wants to fantasy book and say, ooh, Macho should have beat him, can you imagine what he would have done after that? No, because if you're running your own business, you would have made the same fucking decision.
Well, the proof is in the pudding. Look at Hogan's legacy after that, and then we know he was a heel before that. Facing guys like the Outlaw.
Well, that's it. I'm glad you brought that up actually, because he was a heel when he first started, but he was like, like when people first break into the sport, everyone wants to be a heel because when you're nervous, right? When you're nervous and you're not sure about your abilities and you're out in front of people and you're kind of climbing up, it's easy to be a heel. Shut up over there. Sit down and shut up. Yeah, I'm the best. Look at me. So
why do you sound like Triple H right now?
Huh?
But look at how successful his heel run was later. Obviously, we'll get into that later.
Look at all that experience.
That's more proof.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Saying, yeah.
And look at all that experience that he had to get. So to say he wasn't a successful heel. Macho was, right? Macho was fantastic as a heel. And they were taking Elizabeth away from him at this point, but at the same time, like he was so good, there was really no doubt that it was going to work. So to all those people out there that want to say, "Oh God," I saw that earlier. All the people out there that want to say like, Macho should have won. No, he shouldn't have. Like, guys, it's a classic babyface versus heel story. Hulk was going to win. It was telegraphed. It was that way, and it worked really, really well.
No, of course. I mean, like I said, this was planned out for so long, and it just sounds crazy. It's not this bad, but it's like
blow my brother's legs off.
In your play scenario, if you have the choice to run your leading guy or the stand-in, you're going to run your leading guy. The stand-in is only there in case the leading man can't go. And if Hogan couldn't go, then they would go with Macho Man. But we knew that wasn't going to happen. Hogan was back. He was going to be back for a while. And like I said, that's your cash cow.
And
People
he wasn't,
love
again,
Hogan.
everybody likes to look and they like to look back and book off what happened.
No.
Well, yeah, 2 years later, the business did get softer.
But that's not why.
Hulkamania started to get fatigued, but nobody knew in 89 that Hulk was getting fatigued. It hadn't happened yet. Hulkamania was still popular, was still big. He was still pulling in the money and the ratings.
I was going to say, you seriously need to run that cash cow dry. Why would you pull the dough when it's still pouring
just because
out
some smart fans hate Hulk and they're just like, God,
oh my God,
that would have put Hulk in his place, right? Because successful businesses get that way by someone.
Obviously the right decisions were made because he was a cash cow twice. So.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
there you go.
So it's nothing against Macho. Macho was it was almost.
You can argue.
There should be no dispute about it though.
Yeah, it was to his own detriment, Macho, because he was so good at both. You're just going to get cast in other roles. He was more of a workhorse than Hulk was in that sense.
At that moment in time, you could argue that Macho was more versatile than Hogan. I mean, Hogan. There's no way at that moment. I don't even know if
you could argue that it was true.
It was true, because there was no way that Hogan could be turned heel.
But those versatile guys don't get the goal.
But turning Hogan heel, could you imagine trying it? People would probably reject it at that moment. That's probably because usually turning someone heel is not that bad.
Or just keeping Savage heel, having Savage beat him. Even if Savage cheated at Mania, it would have taken all the luster off Hulk. And and it would have been maybe people wouldn't have tuned in or went to house shows to watch Hulk chase him.
Sure,
Hulk was a monster. He was 6'7", 300 pounds. For him to be an underdog, you would almost have to have an Andre beat him and Hulk chase him or something like that.
Sure,
if you were going to do that, not Macho.
Yeah, agreed. And this is where obviously we know Macho goes full heel turn. Like we talked about, he changes managers. We get sensational Sherry into the mix. The feud would also continue as Savage carries Zeus around for a few months. Yeah.
Say what you want though, in all honesty, and Zeus was ridiculous, and the whole thing. They were doing it to promote the video release of the movie and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's
So
fine.
it was all a marketing plan. So it was Zeus was terrible. I get it.
But again,
SummerSlam '89 actually got a big buy rate.
Yeah,
and it did very well for them. It sold out the Meadowlands. Obviously.
People wanted to see it, but I have to tell you that in this whole thing, we know that I think his name is Tiny. Is that right?
Tiny Lister.
Yeah, he's an actor. He's a full blown actor.
He's a legit actor. Yeah.
He literally goes to punch someone, misses them by a foot because that's what actors do, and they had to try. No, you need to hit him for real. We'll be really kind to you, but you need to hit him in the face. Yeah. Macho had to carry this motherfucker for months and do the promo work for him, really carry him into this pay-per-view, once again showing the versatility of Randy, Macho Man Savage.
Because they trusted him. He's a director. Vince was a director.
Mm-hmm.
Who can I put? Vince knew before Hulk beat Savage at Mania 5 that we're going to go to SummerSlam with this guy Zeus, and we're going to bring the movie to life and blah, 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 and all that stuff. And so, it was corny and Zeus was terrible and all that stuff. And, but at the same time, SummerSlam at the time was just, the main event was usually a tag match, just the way it worked out.
Yeah.
So like I said, it got a big buy rate. Hulk and Beefcake against Zeus and Savage got a big buy rate. It just mattered. Did. The wrestling was on fire still, and it was a good build up. And I know this was the Bubblegum Cartoon Company, and you could go watch something else if you wanted to. But yeah, I mean,
exactly, and that's where they would lose both main event matches to Hogan and Brutus Beefcake with Elizabeth in their corner, and that kind of ends the Macho Man Hogan feud for the most part.
Yeah. And Elizabeth pretty much disappeared at this point.
Yeah, because I think at this moment they were really splitting up. It's pretty close.
No, not yet. They weren't yet.
Yeah, but you can tell she wanted to be gone.
Yeah, I think Savage wanted her gone, and I think this is where the point where Savage, I think, and her wanted to try to have kids.
Yeah.
I think he started to kind of cycle off the roids, and I'm not speaking out of school. He's admitted he took roids.
Sure.
He was cycling
a lot
off
of
whatever. That's why Macho started wearing a shirt as Macho King and all that stuff. And
and that's where it comes in, right? We got Macho Man winning King of the Ring in '89, and he actually changes his persona to the Macho King.
He didn't wear a shirt yet, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. But he's coming to that Macho King persona. He got a rematch with Hogan to end the feud, lost for that final time. Savage then began feuding with Dusty Rhodes. And I gotta be honest, I wish I had better memories of that feud. It just wasn't as good as it could have been.
It was hokey. It was they had a mixed man tag match at WrestleMania 6, and it was entertaining for what it was. And Sapphire could barely do anything in there, and all that stuff. But Sherry and Savage carried the show, and Dusty was charismatic and all that stuff. I mean, it was funnish, I guess, for what it was. It was fine.
Yeah, it was one of those feuds.
It was two big names. It was Dusty Rhodes and Macho Man.
That's what I'm saying. I think in hindsight, it's like it should have been better than it was.
Yeah, for sure.
Because of the
but it wasn't treated as serious. It's not like it was a blood feud.
It was a mid card. I mean, it was literally a mid card feud for over a year almost. I mean, and they did what they could, and it was always good. I always think that Dusty almost always got the best of him because, like I said, it's a face territory, right? And that's just the way it goes. So like I said, on the outside of kayfabe, Jess, you touched on this. Macho wanted to be out of the ring more. He and Elizabeth were attempting to have a baby, and he was hoping to have some extra time. So the plan was to put in place a feud with the Warrior, and that match also gets planned into a retirement match, so Macho can go more behind the desk, so to speak. So that happens at WrestleMania 7. We talked about this in great detail in episode 7 of the Legacy of the Warrior, but just recapping real quick. Savage loses this match, and he does get forced to retire, but him and Elizabeth reunite on that pay-per-view, and he kind of rides off into the commentary sunset, which is a pretty cool storyline, but that was all planned out so he can get more time off TV, kind of get off the trail, so to speak. A lot of the commentary work, was taped. They could do it from one place, and they could they can record several weeks of programming in a sitting, and that's what he wanted to do, at least at that moment. But it kind of starts that whole controversy of Macho Man. What does he really want? Does he want to be in the ring? Does he want to take over? Does he think he still has the ability to be the face that runs the place, for lack of a better term? It kind of starts there. And that commentary life doesn't really last too long. Savage continued to wrestle on joint efforts in Japan. We talked about that briefly with our Wrestling Getting Real episode last week. We were really talking about Tenta and his real match, but Macho actually wrestled on that same card and they made note that he was ending his obligations before he officially retired, right? But he still wrestled, so he was wrestling there. Every time somebody didn't show up, like the fucking Warrior, guess who was covering for him? It was the Macho Man at these times.
If the Warrior didn't get suspended after SummerSlam '91, I don't know if we would have seen a second title reign with Savage. I don't really know.
Yeah,
I said that in the Warrior episode that if you keep the Warrior on the path that he was feuding with Jake. Jake turned on him and the stupid shit and the Cobra. And the Undertaker was kind of mixed into it or whatever as well. It was kind of like a trifecta thing. Warrior was feuding with Undertaker. Jake said, "Hey, I'm a snake. Come with me. I'll teach you the dark side. That's the only way you're going to learn to beat the Undertaker." And then Jake turns on him and sides with the Undertaker. Warrior shortly after that gets suspended and kicked off TV. And so they bring Macho out of retirement and they do this segment. They tape the segment afterwards where Jake put a Cobra in the box at their wedding reception.
Sure.
They got married on TV, Elizabeth and Macho. They were already married in real life, Savage and Elizabeth. But since they got reunited at WrestleMania 7, they married live on the air at SummerSlam 91. It was called The Match Made in Heaven and The Match Made in Hell. The main event was Hulk and Warrior against Sergeant Slaughter's bullshit crew. And that's when the Warrior pretty much literally after he walked on the back was called into Vince's office and suspended until further notice because he held them up for money, quote unquote. And we covered more of that in the Warrior episode. So go and listen to that if you want the more longer story. So that happens. And then so basically it's like, okay, this was for the Warrior. He was going to feud with Jake and all that stuff or whatever. So Macho Man gets pretty much brought out of retirement. They film real quick, the Cobra being in one of the presents at the wedding reception. And then they do that. So now Macho's kind of feuding with, but Macho's still commentating. He's still retired. Then on a really cool moment, they do this thing where Jake comes down on Superstars of Wrestling like he's going to wrestle a prelim, starts getting on the microphone, bad-mouthing Macho Man. Macho Man's had enough of that shit, gets up and walks down. Savage or Roberts cuts him off and then ties him up in the ropes, and a Cobra, and legit Cobra, who's, obviously defanged, but a legit Cobra bites Macho Man on the arm, and they fake like the venom's running through his veins and all that stuff. But it was a really graphic segment.
What's he doing? Get out of there, Macho!
Oh, no. Drake the Snake Roberts.
Look at that! Look at that!
Roberts with the King Cobra.
Macho! Dude!
That's the creepiest looking snake I've ever seen in my life. He's got it too close to him. Keep it away from it. That snake is trying. Wait a minute, the snake is ready. Oh, the snake is biting him. The snake is biting him.
I'm out of here!
Roddy Piper on his way to get some help. The snake is gnawing on the arm of Randy Savage, who's helpless, tied in the ropes. All I can say is that snake.
Unlike the shit Cobra segments with Warrior and Jake, this was awesome because it was done live in the ring, and the snake actually bit his fucking arm and broke skin because even though he's defanged, he still has, like the little the small teeth.
He was devenomized.
Yeah, he was devenomized.
So the fangs were still there.
Oh, they were. Yeah. I mean, or they take most of them out,
and they wouldn't, and that snake wouldn't let go.
Yeah. So that was awesome.
It got a little dangerous for a minute.
Yeah, you see the snake gnawing on his arm and all that stuff, and it's a legit Cobra. It really is, and so that was awesome. So you have all this steam behind them, and they do this whole petition where reinstate Macho Man, and they do it. So finally, he comes out of retirement, like a couple days after Survivor Series of '91 on the Tuesday night in Texas ripoff pay-per-view, and Savage
December of '91.
Yeah, Savage comes out of retirement, beats Jake Roberts and all that stuff. And then pretty much The Undertaker turns face at that point off of it. And then now Savage is back. He's an active wrestler. And he gets entered in the Royal Rumble 92, which ends up being for the WWF Championship because that becomes vacant late in 1991.
Yeah. Do I have that right? That the championship becomes vacant and it goes up at the Royal Rumble, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Savage is in it now. He's a part of it. So he's back to an active wrestler.
Yeah,
he's entered in the Royal Rumble 92, which the winner. So Savage is one of the final four in the ring, and this is where shit gets nuts because we talk about it on the Hogan versus Flair episode, and we kind of talk about what if the Warrior never got suspended, would kind of parlay right through this. So wrestling got fucking nuts at the beginning of 92 because Vince in the back had really lost confidence in the Hulk versus Flair program, but Vince was like, okay, I'll go with it. Hulk was also having a falling out behind the scenes with Vince, saying, I want to leave. Fuck you, brother. They were just, the romance was over. Hulk was getting, the steroid trial was kind of coming. And the accusations were starting to come out from people. And it was not just steroids. It was about sexual assaults from Pat Patterson and all this stuff. And it was craziness that people started coming out of the woodworks and accusing, Vince of allowing sexual misconduct to go on behind the scenes, and steroids broke. And so Hulk hadn't been on steroids. He'd gotten super flabby and out of shape and looked awful. You could tell his attitude was awful. He was injured. Hulkamania pretty much had run its course at the end of 91 / beginning of 92. And so Flair had come aboard, and that was a big deal in the wrestling world. But really, Vince never had the confidence of Hulk versus Flair, which is what we should have seen. So what Vince went was with plan B. Because there was the final four in the ring, it was Macho Man, Sid Justice, Hulk, and Flair. Basically, they did a whole schmoz where Vince could cover his ass. It was going to be Hulk versus Flair, with Hulk beating Flair for the world title at WrestleMania 8. That was going to happen. Flair even admits it in his own book, that was booked. They talked about it. They even announced that as the main event. What they did at the end of the Rumble was Savage gets eliminated by Sid. Sid looks at Hulk and goes, oh, you want Flair? Have at him, man. So Hulk turns his back on Sid and starts hammering on Flair, starts to dip Flair over the rope. Sid sneaks up behind him, throws him out. And then Hulk gets pissed off and grabs Sid by the arm. And then Flair dumps Sid out and wins the title. So now they have the title on Flair. Vince could be like, I could put it on Hulk, or I can... If Hulk's being a dick behind the scenes, which he was, and he was threatening to leave, if Hulk's not going to stay around, I'm not going to have him win the title. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that thing with Sid at the end of Royal Rumble and kind of make them face off and make it a thing to where if Hulk wants to stay around, he could beat Flair, and then Sid will tour with Hulk during the summer and challenge for the title and maybe even win it. I don't know that for a fact, but could have happened. Or I could split it and make the main event Macho against Flair, because he was one of the final four in there, and Hulk versus Sid. Well, they did kind of the same old thing that they'd done every year at the main events leading up to it, where it was a tag match between Hulk and Sid against Flair and Taker. Basically, Sid turns on Hulk, doesn't tag him, blah, blah, blah. Does the whole thing. Now you got Hulk versus Sid at Mania 8, and you have Savage versus Flair for the title. So all of a sudden, he goes from retired to fuck, Warrior's gone. Let's put him in here. And now Macho Man's challenging Ric Flair at WrestleMania
Federation Championship match. You are the champion, Ric Flair, and I am the challenger for a little while. But when the bell rings in the Hoosier Dome, the Macho Man Randy Savage is going to take it to you.
WrestleMania 8, Macho Man actually defeats Flair. And what I thought was a great match told in and out of the ring.
You could argue that match or Piper and Brett were the best match on that show.
Oh,
but
for
definitely
the IC title. Jesus.
But show-wise, I would say Flair and Savage did a hell of a job.
Well, because there was a couple of things there. First of all, I don't think anybody in this room that's talking right now even honestly thought that Savage was going to beat Flair, because Flair was the greatest of all time, right? In a lot of people's minds, oh, it's Savage Flair. Flair's going to take that and move on.
And the good thing was, I could see it not happening. If Flair, and it ended up being middle of the card too, the match. So I was like, oh fuck, like Savage isn't winning.
Yeah.
Usually, if it's the main event, they have the face go over at WrestleMania. But because it was middle of the match, in my mind, even then, I was like, Flair's going to win.
Flair's going to win. We all said that.
Or he's going to defend. He's going to be sneaky. Fucking, he'll
do something shitty.
He had Mr. Perfect in his corner. He had something shitty.
Or he'll get DQ'd or something. Yeah. He was going to keep the title. He was going to walk out with the belt. We all felt that. And then on top of that, we kind of started to think, to save face, they wreck Macho's leg in the match, and Macho's basically wrestling on one leg probably for the last 8 minutes or so. And I'm like, he's selling the leg. Oh, they're giving him a decent out. Eventually Flair's going to wrap that up in the figure 4 and we're going to go home. Totally respectable. Macho beats him on one leg, man. I mean, it was kind of like the first swerve.
It was odd. Like Flair bled, which was awesome. It was a great match. And then out of nowhere, it was kind of an odd roll up. He beat him with a weird roll up out of nowhere and pin Flair, and then they did this cool scene at the end where Flair's bleeding like a pig, and he walks up to Elizabeth and he's like, "What about me?" And he kisses Elizabeth, and then Savage comes over and Elizabeth slaps him away, and Savage comes over and does that.
I have to backtrack a little bit, because that's where that Savage Flair storyline came in, where there were quote unquote doctored photos where Elizabeth was hanging out with Flair and
she was mine before she was yours.
Yeah, and then you start to see the real photos and it's really Savage with Elizabeth. You could see they were doctored later, but Flair was using that to get under Savage's skin because if you really want to get under Randy's skin, you use Elizabeth for that. We've seen that at WrestleMania 5. It works pretty well, but
Elizabeth went right after Flair, and now it's mayhem.
Randy to another title win, which we were pretty excited about, I think, back in those days. And then we get into a quick title defense against an up-and-comer, just a guy named Shawn Michaels. No big deal. Macho kind of takes care of that match. And Flair would, the Flair feud would continue. Warrior seems to be looming in the background because he's suspended. Then he's back.
Yeah, Warrior comes back at WrestleMania 8 to save Hulk. So now Warrior's back in the picture.
Yeah, he's back in there.
And they end up facing each other in this co-main event of SummerSlam 92. Yeah. Macho Man defending the belt against the Warrior.
Yeah. I mean, and they would feud, they would go matches, they would cooperate for a time, but then eventually Macho Man would lose the title back to Flair on a taped episode of all things of primetime wrestling. I think it's kind of crazy how someone would lose a title and we wouldn't know it for like 2 weeks.
WWE was in turmoil at this point behind the scenes for obvious reasons, but what ended up happening was Elizabeth left Savage in real life behind the scenes.
Yeah,
she was not on the road with him anymore, and so Macho was completely depressed and just pretty much done. So Vince is like, okay, I'm going to book you to lose to Flair then, and I need you to go out there and sell the knee and do it right. There's a famous story where Razor Ramon comes in at the end. He interferes and then kind of helps Flair beat Savage. So the way Ramon tells it too, and a couple of Flair told the same story. They go to tape this match and Macho's just not into it. And he's not energetic and he's just fucking flat and terrible. And the match was awful. And so they do it. Flair beats Savage for the title. They leave. They all go to the back. Vince is waiting for them at the curtain. He's like, give me the fucking belt. Savage, you put the fucking belt back on and go back out there and we're going to do the match over again. You guys are fucking terrible and you fucking do it again. And so like the crowd's totally confused, this live crowd, because they're like, we just saw the title change hands. So basically they announce on the loudspeaker, Macho Man did not lose the title. This is just over the house show speaker. This wasn't part of the storyline on TV. It was just what they had to do to get through this match. And then, so Vince was pissed at Savage because he wasn't performing well.
Because he couldn't put on TV.
Yeah. So Vince is like, this fucking match is trash. Like, Savage, you're awful. And like, you need to go back out there and do it again. So they made the announcement like, Jack Tunney has said that, they must rematch. Macho Man did not lose the belt. They're going to redo the match or whatever. And like, so they do it. They go out there. It's barely better. Flair beats him again. And then, so basically the way they tell us on syndicated television is just clips of the match with Vince McMahon narrating over it. And then at the end, Macho Man finally succumbed to the pain and he couldn't withstand it. They did, and it was awful. It sucked that Flair's second title reign began this way and Macho Man's second title reign ended this way. And again, it just was the turmoil that was WWF at this point because nothing was happening live on pay-per-views or anything like that.
It's just personal life interfering with kayfabe.
It was just shit.
And to say the least, because Jess is really already kind of touching into this is where things get a little weird, Macho would do some matches here and there. He would team with the Warrior, but in '93 he went back to the commentary booth. I've heard some confusing theories as to why he would eventually leave Vince Kennedy McMahon and the WWF, but he had to sub for a lot of other injured no-show wrestlers a lot of those times when he was supposed to be slowing down. Obviously, Elizabeth leaving him was a big factor in what happened here. Some say he just didn't know what he wanted at this point, and he succumbed to more money and less dates with WCW, and that leads into, I think we've heard it on a few podcasts.
Yeah, he stuck around, WrestleMania 10, he beat Crush in a match.
Yeah.
And, he did this shit angle with Repo Man. Repo Man stole his hat on Monday Night Raw, and they would use Savage like that. And house shows that if someone no-show, they would put Savage in there. Exactly. I watched a house show, I think at the Pond, and it was Savage against El Gigante or Giant Gonzalez for some odd. I don't even know why. It was cool to see Macho, but it was just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, it was just they would use Macho, all that stuff, and so it was sad because like he I think Macho really wanted to have more in the tank, but he didn't know what he wanted. Vince really is just like, you know what? You're going to be an ambassador. You're a legend at this point. Your ring career's done. So just be like my ambassador, be my legend or whatever. Hulk at this point had been like, goodbye, fuck, suck my dick. And so like he left or whatever. Legitly suck it, brother. And so that's kind of a combo of Macho Man and Hulk. So Macho was kind of like McMahon's ambassador to his kind of, this is the guy from our past. You know, if you remember the 80s and 90s, this is the guy. So, but basically in 94, it was time to go. And Vince got on a live episode of Raw and pretty much said, you know, normally I have the Macho Man by my side here. I'm paraphrasing. Normally I have the Macho Man here by my side, but he's not here this week. We didn't come to terms on his contract. We wish him the best. Thank you for everything or whatever.
All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. We'll have more action for you momentarily. At this time, obviously conspicuous by his absence is the Macho Man Randy Savage. And I'd like to announce, unfortunately, that Randy Savage has been unable to sign a contract with the World Wrestling Federation, not unable to rather come to terms with the World Wrestling Federation for a new contract. But Randy, I know you're out there listening, and on behalf of all of us here in the World Wrestling Federation, all of your fans, and certainly me, the number one fan, I'd like to say thank you for all of your positive contributions to the World Wrestling Federation. Thank you, Randy Savage, for all of the wonderful memories for so many years here in the World Wrestling Federation. We wish you.
Basically, you've heard a few podcasts talking about drunken conversation where Macho calls Vince in the middle of the night and says, I'm going to WCW, brother. And that's kind of the end of it. And that's where we get that real life. And you can tell Vince is noticeably distraught by it. I think it's one of the closest relationships he had at the time next to Hogan, which was also hot and cold.
Well, and there was also a dumb rumor again.
Oh, that rumor. I forget about that.
That here's the vicious rumor that went around.
Yeah, that's not true, by the way.
That Stephanie McMahon, who I believe was just under 18 at the time.
I thought she was like 14 or 15.
Not a little older than that, I think. And that Macho Man made an advance towards her, or Vince found out about that they were, you know, doing stuff together. And this is like the famous, you know, rumor on the internet. And Vince found out about it, and that's pretty much why. Well, here's the deal. Vince would not have gotten on live TV and almost cried and said goodbye to Macho Man if that happened. Then people would say, no, Vince found out about it later, a couple years later, because it was true. After WCW went out of business, they never mentioned Macho Man. He never had a nostalgia run, nothing like that. The reason why that didn't happen is because Macho did not like Hulk in real life. So when Hulk came back in 2002, Macho did not want to have anything to do with him or be in the same promotion at all. So Macho just chose not to come back. I don't know why at that point Vince never talked about him a lot or anything like that, but it's not true. He did not have a relationship with Stephanie. Vince did not find out about it later and banish Savage or whatever. Because if that was the case, if that really happened, I don't think Macho would ever be in the Hall of Fame now.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah, they would have never inducted him in the Hall of Fame if that was true.
There was just a lot of personal heat between Macho and Vince, and Macho was super stubborn.
Well, especially Macho and Hulk, too.
Yeah, and so Macho did not want anything to do. Now, later on, I don't know why Macho never came back for, like, you know, I don't know. Nobody really knows what happened, you know, like before Macho died and why he didn't reconnect with Vince. But for some reason, he just stayed away. And it wasn't because of the Stephanie thing. That is bullshit. That is a total rumor.
No, and that's the thing, just to dispel that, guys. And, you know, we're going to get into the WCW and ending days of Macho Man on our second episode of the Legacy of Macho Man. Well, I'll be the WCW plug. But just so you know, before we sign off here, you can always reach us via Instagram at O.W.P 2019, SoundCloud at Our Wrestling Podcast, YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel, or you can do the easy thing, download WrestlePost. It's an app at no charge to you. You can get that on the Apple and Android platforms, and you could join us along with other great podcasts of the day. This is David from the O.W.P signing off, along with Jess and Cuz.